My daughter called me at 2 in the morning. "Dad, open the door," she whispered. "It is freezing out here." I froze on the spot. My hand stopped halfway to the nightstand lamp. My daughter has been dead for 5 years. I looked toward the front door, and through the frosted glass I saw a silhouette standing there in the snow. Then she said, "Dad, help me. He is coming." What happened next left me terrified and questioning my own sanity, but I am not crazy. I am Isaiah Washington, and I am going to tell you how a ghost tried to destroy me and how I destroyed the man hiding behind it. If you have ever been told you are losing your mind by the people who are supposed to love you, hit that like button and subscribe. The ringing was the first thing that was wrong. Nobody calls my landline anymore, not since Nia passed. The ringer is an old mechanical bell sound, harsh and loud in the silence of a Chicago winter night. The clock on my nightstand read 2:03 in the morning. My heart hammered against my ribs, a slow, heavy thud that I could feel in my throat. I am 73 years old. Calls at this hour are never good news. They usually mean someone else has died. I sat up, my joints popping in the cold air of the bedroom. The heating system in this old house struggles when the wind comes off Lake Michigan like this. I reached for the handset on the bedside table. My hand was steady. I spent 40 years as a forensic auditor digging through the lies of corrupt CEOs and money launderers. You learn not to shake when the pressure is on. You learn to look at the facts. I looked at the caller ID screen. The blue light illuminated the dark room. 3 letters. NIA. My breath caught in my throat. That was impossible. We disconnected her line the week after the funeral. I paid the final bill myself. I still have the receipt in a box in the attic. I stared at the screen, waiting for my old eyes to adjust, waiting for the letters to change to something logical like spam or unknown. But they did not change. Nia was calling me. I picked up the receiver and put it to my ear. I did not speak. I listened. "Dad." The voice was unmistakable. It was her pitch, her cadence, the slight rasp she always had when she was cold or scared. It was the voice of the girl I raised alone after my wife passed. The girl I identified in the morgue 5 years ago. "Dad, please open the door. It is freezing out here." "Braden." "He is coming." The line went dead. There was no dial tone, just a heavy silence that felt like it was pressing against my eardrums. I sat there for a second, the receiver still in my hand. Logic told me this was a prank, a cruel, sick recording played by some scammer. But my gut, the instinct that kept me alive in Vietnam and kept me employed in the corporate world, told me something else. It told me to move. I opened the drawer of my nightstand and took out my Glock 19. I checked the chamber. Loaded. I am old, but I am not helpless. I put on my slippers and my heavy robe and walked out into the hallway. The floorboards creaked under my weight. The house was dark, but the streetlights outside cast long, pale shadows through the windows. The wind howled outside, rattling the frames. A blizzard had hit Chicago 3 hours ago, burying everything in white. I walked to the front door. The cold was seeping through the cracks in the wood. I gripped the gun in my right hand and put my left hand on the deadbolt. I hesitated. If I opened this door and there was nothing there, I would have to admit that maybe I was slipping. That maybe the grief had finally cracked my brain. But if I opened it and someone was there? I leaned forward and looked through the peephole. My blood turned to ice. Standing on my porch under the yellow glow of the porch light was a woman. She was shivering violently, her arms wrapped around herself. She was wearing a red coat, a bright crimson wool coat with a high collar. It was the same coat Nia was wearing the night her car went off the bridge. I unlocked the deadbolt. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet house. I threw the door open. The wind hit me instantly, stinging my face with ice crystals. The woman looked up. The light hit her face. Dark skin, high cheekbones, eyes wide with terror. It was Nia. It was my daughter. She looked exactly as she did the last time I saw her alive, only thinner, paler. "Naya," I whispered. My gun hand lowered to my side. She did not step forward to hug me. She did not cry with relief. She looked past me into the dark house, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. "Dad," she said, and her teeth were chattering. "You have to help me. I need cash. Do not tell Braden. Please, just give me the money." The auditor in me woke up. This was wrong. My daughter returns from the dead after 5 years, and the first thing she asks for is cash. Not water, not warmth, cash. Come inside, I said, reaching out to grab her arm. You are freezing. Get in the house, girl. No, she screamed, pulling back. He is coming. I see the lights. She pointed toward the end of the driveway. Through the swirling snow, I saw the high beams of a car cutting through the darkness. A large black SUV was turning into my street, moving fast despite the ice. I have to go, she said. Her voice changed. It lost that soft, daughterly tone and became sharp, desperate. Don't tell him I was here, old man. She turned and ran. She did not run like a ghost. She ran like a woman in heels, slipping on the ice, stumbling, recovering, and sprinting toward the neighbor's yard, disappearing into the shadows of the large oak trees. "Nia, wait!" I shouted. I stepped out onto the porch, the snow soaking my slippers instantly. The black SUV screeched to a halt right in front of my driveway. The door flew open. A man jumped out. He was tall, wearing an expensive beige cashmere coat that cost more than my first car. It was Braden Cole. My son-in-law, the man who married my daughter 2 years before she died, the man who cried the loudest at her funeral, the man who was currently managing the $2 million trust fund for my grandson Leo. "Isaiah, what are you doing?" he yelled. He ran up the driveway, his expensive leather boots crunching in the snow. "Get inside. You are going to freeze to death." He grabbed my arm, his grip firm and controlling. He tried to steer me back into the house. I pulled my arm away. "I saw her, Braden," I said. My voice was shaking, but not from the cold. "I saw Nia. She was right here. She was wearing her red coat." Braden stopped. He looked at me with an expression I had seen too many times lately. A mix of pity and annoyance. A look you give to a child who has spilled his milk. "Dad," he said, his voice dropping to a patronizing soothe. "Nia is dead. We buried her 5 years ago. Remember, you are confused again." "I am not confused," I snapped. "She called me. On the landline. She said you were coming. And here you are." Braden sighed. He guided me into the hallway and kicked the door shut, blocking out the wind. He shook the snow off his coat. He looked around my living room, his eyes scanning for something. "I was driving by because I saw your light on." He lied. He lives 40 minutes away in the city. Nobody just drives by in a blizzard at 2 in the morning. I saw the front door open and you standing there screaming at the snow. "Dad, I am worried about you. This is the 3rd time this month." That was a lie. There was no first or second time. But I saw what he was doing. He was building a narrative. He was establishing a record. I checked the caller ID, I said, pointing to the bedroom. It said, Nia. Braden walked past me into the bedroom. He picked up the handset and looked at the screen. Then he shook his head and held it up for me to see. "It says unknown number, Dad. See? Probably just a telemarketer. Your mind filled in the rest. It happens. It is called grief hallucinations. Dr. Sterling told us to watch out for this." I squinted at the screen. He was right. It said unknown number. But I knew what I saw 5 minutes ago. I verified numbers for a living. I do not misread data. He put the phone down and walked over to my medicine cabinet in the master bathroom. I followed him. He opened it and started counting my blood pressure pills and my sleeping aids. "Have you been taking your meds properly?" he asked, his back to me. "Or did you skip a dose again? Disorientation is a side effect of withdrawal, you know." "I take my pills, Braden," I said, my hand tightening on the grip of the Glock which I had tucked into my robe pocket. "Why are you really here?" He turned around and flashed that perfect salesman smile, the smile that convinced my daughter to marry him, the smile that convinced investors to give him their savings. "I told you. I was worried. Leo has been asking about you. He says Grandpa acts funny on the phone, and now this, running out into a blizzard chasing ghosts." He walked past me, patting my shoulder. He smelled of expensive cologne and stale cigar smoke. "Look, Dad," he said, walking to the front door. "Go back to sleep. We will talk about this tomorrow. Maybe it is time we revisited the conversation about the assisted living facility. For your own safety. You cannot keep living here alone if you are seeing dead people." He opened the door. The wind howled again. "Lock the door behind me, okay," he said, "and take a sleeping pill." He walked out to his SUV, got in, and drove away. I stood there in the hallway listening to the silence of the house return. My heart was still racing. I knew what he was doing. He was gaslighting me. He was trying to paint me as incompetent. He wanted control. But he made a mistake. I waited until his taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I went to the closet and put on my heavy boots and my parka. I grabbed a flashlight. I went back out onto the porch. The snow was falling fast, covering everything. But under the shelter of the porch roof, the ground was relatively clear. I shined the flashlight where the woman had stood. There, in the thin layer of snow that had blown onto the wood, were footprints. They were clear, distinct prints of a high-heeled boot. A woman's boot. Small, narrow. I knelt down and examined them closely. I know sizes. Nia wore a size 9. She was a tall girl with big feet like her father. These prints were small, a size 7 at most. I took my phone out and snapped 3 pictures of the footprints before the wind could blow more snow over them. Then I looked at the railing. There was a smudge of something on the white wood where she had grabbed it to steady herself. I leaned in close. It was makeup. A streak of foundation used to cover up skin blemishes. Dark foundation. Ghosts do not leave footprints. Ghosts do not wear makeup. And ghosts certainly do not ask for cash. I stood up and looked down the street where Braden had driven off. He thought he was dealing with a senile old man who missed his daughter. He thought he could play games with my mind to get his hands on my assets and my grandson. He forgot who I am. I am Isaiah Washington. I spent 40 years catching liars who were smarter than him. I went back inside and locked the door. I did not take a sleeping pill. I went to the kitchen and brewed a pot of strong black coffee. I sat at the table and opened my laptop. I logged into my bank account. Braden said he was worried about my health, but when he was in my bedroom looking at the phone, he wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at the stack of bank statements I keep on the dresser. I checked my activity log. There was a pending request for a transfer of authority on my retirement account initiated yesterday evening. The reason listed was medical incapacity. I smiled, a cold, hard smile. So that is the game, I whispered to the empty room. You want to make me crazy, Braden. You want to use my dead daughter as a weapon. I took a sip of coffee. You have no idea what you just started. My daughter may be dead, but her father is very much alive, and I'm about to audit your entire life. The sun came up over Chicago cold and bright, but it brought no warmth to my house. The events of 2 a.m. were still sitting in my stomach like a block of lead. I had not slept. I had spent the remaining hours of darkness sitting in my armchair watching the street, waiting for the black SUV to return. I knew he would come back. A man like Braden Cole does not leave loose ends. He circles back to tighten the knot. At 9 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I did not jump. I expected it. I walked to the door, my joints stiff from the cold night. When I opened it, Braden was standing there. He had shaved and changed into a fresh suit, navy blue Italian cut, probably $3,000. He looked like the picture of success. He looked like a man who had nothing to hide. But he was not alone. Standing next to him, holding his hand, was my grandson Leo. "Hi," Grandpa Leo said quietly. He looked small in his winter coat, his eyes wide and anxious. He looked at me like he wasn't sure if he should hug me or run away. Braden had already been working on him. I could see it in the boy's hesitation. I forced a smile. It was the hardest thing I had done all morning. "Hey there, little man," I said, stepping back to let them in. Braden breezed past me, bringing a gust of cold air and that same expensive cologne. "I brought him over to see you, Dad," he said, his voice loud, too cheerful. "I thought it might cheer you up. After last night," he let the last sentence hang in the air. He was planting the seed early. He wanted Leo to know that something happened last night, something bad, something crazy involving Grandpa. I looked at Braden. I did not take the bait. I closed the door and locked it. "I am always happy to see Leo," I said, keeping my voice even. Braden didn't sit down. He started pacing around my living room, picking up picture frames and putting them back down, moving a coaster an inch to the left. He was marking his territory. He was showing me that he felt comfortable enough to rearrange my life. "Go play in the den," Leo Braden said without looking at the boy. "Grandpa and I need to talk about his medicine." Leo looked at me. I nodded. "Go on, son. There are cookies in the jar." As soon as Leo was out of earshot, Braden's smile vanished. He turned to me, his face settling into a mask of exaggerated concern. It was a performance. I had seen CEOs wear this same face right before they told their employees the pension fund was empty. "I called Dr. Sterling this morning, Braden said. He is worried, Dad. He says visual hallucinations are a sign of rapid decline. We need to check your dosage. I didn't say a word. I just watched him. I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed. I was not a father looking at a son-in-law anymore. I was an auditor observing a subject. I was looking for the tell. I am going to check your supply, Braden said, pointing toward the hallway. Stay here. He walked past me, bumping my shoulder slightly. It was a power move, a physical assertion of dominance. I let him go. I listened to his heavy footsteps on the hardwood floor heading toward the master bathroom. I heard the cabinet door creak open, then silence. I knew exactly what was in that cabinet. My blood pressure medication, my cholesterol pills, and a bottle of anxiety medication that Dr. Sterling had prescribed 6 months ago after I had a panic attack in the grocery store. A bottle I took religiously every night, a bottle that was half empty. Braden came back into the living room 2 minutes later. He was holding the orange bottle. He held it up to the light, shaking it. It rattled loudly. Just as I thought, he said, his voice dripping with fake disappointment. It is full, Dad. You haven't taken a single pill. I stared at the bottle. It looked new. The label was crisp. I realized then what he had done. He had palmed it. He had brought a fresh bottle with him in his pocket and swapped it out while he was in the bathroom. It was a simple sleight of hand, a magic trick designed to make me look incompetent. If I yelled that he switched the bottles, I would sound paranoid. I would sound exactly like the crazy old man he was painting me to be. So I did nothing. I let the silence stretch. I let him hold the bottle up like a trophy. You are skipping doses, Braden continued, his voice gaining confidence. That explains the chemical imbalance. That explains why you are seeing dead people in the snow, Isaiah. You are doing this to yourself. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. I am calling Sterling right now. He needs to know. He put the phone on speaker and held it flat in his hand like a waiter holding a tray. He wanted me to hear. He wanted to humiliate me. Dr. Sterling picked up on the second ring. Hello, Braden. Is everything all right? No, Dr. Braden said, looking me dead in the eye. I am at the house. I checked the meds. The anxiety pills are untouched. He hasn't been taking them. I heard the doctor sigh on the other end. That is unfortunate. That explains the hallucinations. Sudden withdrawal can cause severe psychosis in patients his age. I felt a flash of anger. Sterling was taking his word for it. He didn't ask to speak to me. He didn't ask for proof. He just accepted the narrative because Braden was the responsible younger man, and I was the grieving widower. He was out in the blizzard last night, Dr. Braden said. He was shouting for Nia. He thought she was at the door. It is getting dangerous. I have Leo here, and honestly, I am scared to leave him alone with Isaiah. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. He was using my grandson as a weapon. He was threatening to cut me off. I think it is time, Dr. Sterling said, his voice tinny through the speaker. We need to look at assisted living, for his own safety. Braden, he needs 24-hour supervision. I agree, Braden said. I will start making calls. Thank you, doctor. He hung up. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. He looked at me with a triumphant smirk. You heard him, Dad, Braden said. It is for your own good. We can't have you wandering around freezing to death chasing ghosts. He raised his hand to adjust his tie. His suit jacket sleeve rode up his wrist. And that is when I saw it. Glinting in the morning light on his left wrist was a watch. It was not a modern smartwatch. It was gold with a leather band. A vintage Rolex date, just from 1982. My breath hitched. I knew that watch. I knew every scratch on the crystal. I knew the way the second hand sweeped. My wife Martha bought me that watch for our 10th anniversary. On the back, she had engraved, "To Ike Love Martha." It was my most prized possession. 6 months ago, Braden had helped me install a new security system in the house. A week later, the watch went missing from my dresser drawer. Braden had told me it was probably a burglar. He said he saw signs of forced entry at the back door. He filed the police report for me. He handled the insurance. I never got the watch back. I thought it was gone forever, sold at some pawn shop. But there it was, sitting on the wrist of the man who was telling me I was crazy. He hadn't just stolen my watch. He was wearing it in my house. The arrogance was breathtaking. He was so sure I was senile, so sure I was blind, that he didn't even bother to hide the evidence of his theft. I looked at his face. He was still talking, rambling on about safety and nursing homes, but I stopped listening. I looked at his eyes. They were empty. There was no compassion there. There was only calculation. He was looking at me and seeing a dollar sign. He was seeing a house he could sell. He was seeing a trust fund he could raid. I lowered my gaze back to the watch. I memorized it. I logged it in my mental file. Evidence item 1, theft. I didn't say anything about the watch, not yet. If I accused him now, he would say I was confused. He would say he bought it himself. He would gaslight me. Instead, I nodded slowly. I tried to look defeated. I slumped my shoulders. "Maybe you are right, Braden," I whispered. My voice sounded old and weak. It was the best acting performance of my life. "Maybe I am confused." Braden relaxed. His shoulders dropped. He exhaled. He thought he had won. He thought the resistance was broken. "I just want you safe, Dad," he said, patting my arm again. "Why don't you go lie down? I will take Leo for lunch. We will come back later to check on you." He went to the den and called Leo. "Come on, buddy. Grandpa needs to rest." Leo ran out and hugged my leg. "Bye, Grandpa," he said. "I hope you feel better." I stroked his hair. "I will." "Leo," I said, "I promise." I watched them leave. I watched Braden usher my grandson into that expensive black SUV. I watched them drive away down the snow-covered street. As soon as they were gone, I straightened my back. The old man act dropped away. The auditor was back in charge. I went to the kitchen and grabbed a measuring tape from the junk drawer. Then I put on my coat and boots. I went out the back door, circling around the house so the neighbors wouldn't see me coming out the front. I walked to the front porch. The wind had died down, but it was still freezing. The snow had drifted, but the area near the door was protected by the overhang. I knelt down. The footprints were still there, faint but visible. I shined my phone's flashlight on them to get better contrast. I remembered Nia's feet. She was a tall woman, 5'10". She had big feet for a girl size 9. We used to joke about it when we went shoe shopping for prom. She always complained she couldn't find the cute heels in her size. I placed the tape measure next to the clearest print in the snow. The heel was narrow. The toe was pointed. I measured the length, 9 inches. I did the math in my head. A woman's size 9 shoe is roughly 10 inches long. This print was barely 9 inches. That translates to a size 7, maybe a 6.5. This wasn't Naya. My daughter had not come back as a ghost, and my daughter had not miraculously shrunk 2 shoe sizes in the afterlife. This was a living, breathing human woman, a woman with small feet who owned a red coat. I stood up, my knees cracking. I looked out at the white lawn. This was not a hallucination. This was a production. A stage play directed by Braden Cole, designed to break my mind. He had hired someone. He had found a woman who looked like Nia, dressed her up, and sent her to my door in the middle of a blizzard. The cruelty of it made my stomach turn. To use a man's dead child against him. To weaponize my grief to steal my money. It was evil. Pure, simple evil. But Braden had made a fatal error. He assumed I would react with emotion. He assumed I would crumble. He forgot that before I was a grieving father, I was a man who hunted fraud for a living. He forgot that I know how to spot a discrepancy in the ledger. And this footprint, this size 7 hole in the snow, was a discrepancy. I took photos. Dozens of them. From every angle. I documented the measurement, I documented the time. Then I went back inside. I walked into the bathroom and took the bottle of pills Braden had left. I examined the lot number on the side. I went to my desk and pulled out my old pharmacy receipts. The lot numbers didn't match. He hadn't just swapped the pills. He had bought a new bottle, probably over the counter or from another source, and peeled the label off my old one to stick it on. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. I sat down at my desk. I opened a fresh notebook. On the first page, I wrote Braden Cole. Underneath, I wrote the list. 1. Stolen watch. 2. Fake pills. 3. The actress. I looked at the list. It wasn't enough. Not for the police. Not yet. They would still see a confused old man fighting with his caring son-in-law. I needed more. I needed to know who the girl was. I needed to know where the money was going. I needed to audit him. I closed the notebook. Braden wanted me to go to a nursing home. He wanted me out of the way. I wasn't going anywhere. I picked up the phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 5 years. A buddy of mine from the old days. A guy who used to run surveillance for the firm when we had to track down executives who tried to skip town. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Ike, is that you?" "Yeah, it's me," I said. "I need a favor. I need a background check." And I need a listening device. Who's the target? My son-in-law, I said. And I want to know everything. Every debt, every mistress, every secret. I hung up the phone. I looked at the picture of Nia on my desk, her smiling face frozen in time. I am sorry, baby girl, I whispered. I am sorry he is using you like this. I touched the glass frame. But don't worry. Daddy is going to fix it. I am going to make him wish he had seen a real ghost. Access denied. The words on the bank teller's screen were small, but they hit me harder than a physical blow. I stood at the counter of the First National branch on Michigan Avenue. I have banked here since 1975. I know the manager's kids' names. I know the security guard's favorite football team. But today, the young woman behind the glass looked at me with a mixture of pity and fear. She did not look at me like Isaiah Washington, the respected customer. She looked at me like I was a liability. I tried to keep my voice level. What do you mean, access denied? It is my account. I want to withdraw $5,000 from my checking. I am so sorry, Mr. Washington, she said, her fingers hovering nervously over the silent alarm button. There has been a flag placed on your accounts. All of them. Checking savings and the retirement portfolio. We cannot authorize any withdrawals over $50 without a countersignature. A countersignature from whom I asked, though I already knew the answer. The bile rose in my throat. From your temporary guardian, she whispered. Mr. Braden Cole filed the emergency paperwork this morning. He submitted a police report regarding a wandering incident last night and an affidavit from your physician regarding cognitive decline. The court granted an emergency hold pending a hearing. I gripped the marble counter. My knuckles turned ash gray. He moved faster than I anticipated. He used the police visit. He used the fake pill bottle. He used the actress in the snow. He weaponized every single breadcrumb he dropped to build a cage around me in less than 12 hours. I took a deep breath. I needed to know the extent of the damage. I needed to see the perimeter of the trap. What about the trust? She looked confused. The trust fund, I said, my voice dropping to a low growl. The Nia Washington Memorial Trust. The one for my grandson Leo. I am the sole trustee until he turns 18. Is that frozen too? She typed for a moment, her eyes scanning the screen. Then she went pale. Mr. Washington. There is a pending request on that account too. It is not frozen yet because it requires a separate legal review, but there is a petition to remove you as trustee for cause. The cause listed is mismanagement due to dementia, due to. I closed my eyes. There it was. The end game. It wasn't about my house. It wasn't about my little pension. It was about the $2 million Nia left behind. Her life insurance. The settlement from the trucking company that hit her car. Blood money. Money meant to secure Leo's future. Money I had guarded like a bulldog for 5 years, ensuring not a single cent was wasted. Braden didn't give a damn about my health. He was drowning. You don't try to crack a trust fund unless you are desperate, unless the sharks are circling. I looked at the teller. Print the activity log, I said. I want to see every time he tried to access it. She hesitated. Do it, I said, my voice sharp. I am still the trustee. The judge hasn't signed that order yet. Print it. She printed the pages. I snatched them up and walked out of the bank. The security guard watched me go, his hand on his belt. I walked out into the cold Chicago wind feeling naked. My money was gone. My reputation was gone. In the eyes of the law, I was no longer a man. I was a child, a problem to be managed. I drove home with one hand on the wheel and the other gripping the stack of papers. I checked the logs at red lights. Braden had been trying to access the trust portal for months. Failed password attempts, requests to change the mailing address. He was probing the defenses. When I pulled into my driveway, his black SUV was already there. It was parked aggressively blocking my garage. He wanted me to know he was already inside. He had a key. Nia gave it to him years ago, and I never changed the locks because I didn't want to start a war. Now the war was here. I walked into my house. The smell of takeout food filled the air. Thai food. It smelled like peanut sauce and betrayal. Braden was sitting at my dining room table. He had set 2 places. He had opened a bottle of my wine, a vintage Cabernet I was saving for Leo's 21st birthday. He was pouring it into 2 glasses like we were old friends catching up. Next to the wine bottle was a thick leather folder. You are late, Dad, Braden said without looking up. He took a sip of the wine. You really shouldn't be driving. The bank called me. They said you made a scene. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't sit down. I stood at the head of the table looking down at him. You froze my accounts, Braden. You lied to a judge. Braden sighed. He put the glass down. He looked at me with that same infuriatingly calm expression, the look of a man dealing with a toddler. I protected your assets, Isaiah. You are unwell. You are throwing money at ghosts. You were going to give cash to a hallucination last night. I had to stop the bleeding. He tapped the leather folder. Sit down. We need to handle this like adults. I remained standing. I am not signing anything. Braden's face hardened. The mask slipped just a fraction. He opened the folder. Inside was a document. Transfer of trusteeship. This is not a request, Dad. This is the solution. You sign this. You transfer control of Leo's trust to me. I am his father. It should have been mine from the start. And in exchange, I asked. In exchange, Braden said, leaning back, I make sure you are taken care of. I found a place. The Meadows. Top tier, private rooms, garden views, 24-hour care. They specialize in advanced cases. It costs $10,000 a month. I will pay for it out of the estate. You will never have to worry about a thing again. I laughed. It was a dry, harsh sound. You mean you will pay for it with Leo's money? You will drain that boy's future to pay for my prison cell and your gambling debts. Braden stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. He wasn't smiling anymore. His face was red. I do not gamble, he spat. I am an investor, and right now I need liquidity. But that is none of your business. Your business is signing that paper. He pulled a pen from his jacket pocket. It was a gold Mont Blanc, probably bought with stolen money. He threw it on the document. Sign it, Isaiah. I looked at the pen. I looked at the man my daughter loved. I saw the desperation in his eyes. He was terrified. He needed that $2 million or he was dead. The wolves he owed money to were probably closer than I thought. I will not sign it, I said quietly. I will not let you rob my grandson. Braden walked around the table. He got close to me. Too close. He was younger, stronger, taller. He used his physical presence to intimidate. He loomed over me. Then we do it the hard way, he whispered. He picked up the folder and waved it in my face. This is the voluntary agreement. This is the nice way. This says you are retiring. You are tired. You want to spend your twilight years resting. We keep your dignity intact. He dropped the folder and pulled another document from his briefcase on the floor. This one was stapled on blue legal paper. This, he said, holding it up, is the petition for involuntary commitment. This says you are a danger to yourself and others. This says you are hallucinating. This says you ran into a blizzard with a loaded gun. This relies on the police report and Dr. Sterling's affidavit. He stepped closer, his breath smelling of wine. If I file this, Isaiah, you lose everything. You don't just lose the money. You lose your freedom. You lose your right to vote. You lose your right to see Leo. The court will appoint a stranger to manage your life, and I will still get control of the trust because I am the next of kin. But you will rot in a state facility medicated until you drool. He smiled. It was a cruel, ugly smile. So make a choice. Sign for love. Sign because you trust me to take care of Leo. Or force my hand and lose your mind. Officially. I looked at the blue paper. It was a death sentence. He had me cornered. If I fought him in court, it would take months. He would drag my name through the mud. He would bring up the grief, the depression after Nia died. He would twist every moment of weakness I ever had. And while we fought, the accounts would be frozen. I wouldn't have access to the resources I needed to investigate him. I needed time. I needed to get him out of my house so I could think. So I could work. I looked at the voluntary transfer agreement. I looked at the pen. I reached out and picked up the Mont Blanc. It felt heavy in my hand. Braden's eyes lit up. He thought he had me. He thought the old man was folding. I will sign. I said, my voice trembling just enough to sell it. But not tonight. I need to read it. I need to sleep, Braden. You have me so confused. Braden hesitated. He wanted the signature now, but he also wanted to believe he had won. He wanted to believe I was weak. Fine, he said, snatching the pen back. Read it, but I want it signed by tomorrow morning. I am coming back at 8 a.m. to pick it up. If it isn't signed, I am filing the blue papers. Do you understand? I understand, I said, looking at the floor. I am tired, Braden. Just leave me alone. He nodded, satisfied with his victory. He closed the briefcase. Good choice, Dad. It is better this way. You will see. The Meadows is really nice. You will like the pudding. He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. Oh, and Dad, don't try to leave. I put a tracker on your car. For your safety. If you try to run, the police will pick you up before you hit the highway. Silver alert. Confused elderly man. You know how it goes. He walked out. I locked the door and leaned against it. My heart was hammering. He had a tracker on my car. He had frozen my money. He had the legal system loaded and aimed at my head. But he made a mistake. He gave me 12 hours. He thought I was going to spend the night reading legal documents and crying. He thought I was going to pack a bag for the nursing home. He was wrong. I went to the kitchen and poured the expensive wine down the sink. I washed the glass, then I went to the basement. I pulled away the loose panel behind the washing machine. Braden knew about my bank accounts. He knew about the trust. He knew about the car. But he didn't know about the rainy day fund. He didn't know about the cash I had been stashing away since 1999. The cash from the consulting gigs I did off the books. The cash I kept for a moment exactly like this. I pulled out the metal box. I opened it. $50,000 in non-sequential bills. Untraceable. Unfrozen. I took a handful of bills and put them in my pocket. Then I went to my tool bench. I grabbed my signal detector. I was going to find that tracker on my car. And then I was going to put it on a Greyhound bus headed for Mexico. Braden wanted to play games with reality. He wanted to create a narrative where I was the helpless victim. Tomorrow night, the actress was going to return. I knew she would. He would send her to seal the deal to make sure I was broken. But this time, I wouldn't be opening the door with a question. I would be opening it with an offer. I was going to buy his ghost. And then I was going to turn her against him. 12 hours. That was the deadline Braden gave me. 12 hours to sign away my rights, my dignity, and my grandson's future. He thought I was spending this time cowering in my bedroom staring at the blue legal papers that threatened to commit me to a state facility. He thought I was packing a suitcase for the Meadows, weeping over old photo albums. He was arrogant, and arrogance creates blind spots. I spent the first hour finding the tracker. It was exactly where I expected it to be, tucked inside the rear wheel well of my Buick, held in place by a cheap magnet. It was a simple GPS unit, the kind you buy online to track cheating spouses or teenage drivers. I didn't smash it. That would alert him. Instead, I drove to the Greyhound station downtown. I found a bus heading to Mexico City with a layover in El Paso. I slipped the tracker into the luggage compartment of a beat-up suitcase belonging to a sleeping backpacker. Let Braden explain to the judge why his confused father-in-law was doing 70 miles an hour through Missouri. I returned home and parked the car in the garage. I turned off all the lights except for a single dim lamp in the study. I sat in my leather chair facing the window that looked out onto the side yard, the window that was directly above the wall safe Braden had been trying to crack for months. I checked my watch. 2 a.m., the witching hour. If Braden stuck to his script, the encore performance was due any minute. He needed to break me before morning. He needed me so terrified, so convinced of my own insanity that I would sign anything just to make the ghost stop. At 2:14, I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. It was a soft, rhythmic sound against the glass. Not the front door this time, the study window. It was intimate, invasive. He was escalating the intrusion. He was bringing the ghost into my sanctuary. I didn't move immediately. I let the tapping continue for a minute. Tap, tap, tap. Psychological pressure. It builds in the silence. I stood up slowly, my joints aching in the damp cold. I walked to the window and pulled back the heavy velvet curtain just an inch. There she was, the woman in the red coat. She was standing in the flower bed, the snow rising to her shins. Her face was pressed close to the glass, illuminated by the spill of light from the street lamp. Her makeup was perfect, pale skin, dark circles under the eyes, lips tinted blue to simulate hypothermia. She was shivering, her breath fogging the glass. She saw me. Her eyes locked onto mine. They were wide, pleading. "Dad," she mouthed. The glass muffled her voice, turning it into a ghostly whisper. "Dad, please, let me in." I unlocked the window latch. The sash was heavy old wood, swollen with winter moisture. I pushed it up. The wind rushed in, carrying snowflakes and the scent of ozone. "Nia," I whispered. I injected a tremor into my voice. I needed her to think the act was working. I needed her to think I was breaking. "Is it really you, baby girl?" She leaned in, her hands gripping the windowsill. Her gloves were wet. "It is me, Dad," she sobbed. "I am so cold. It hurts. It hurts so much." "Why are you here?" I asked, leaning closer. "Why did you come back?" "Braden," she wept. "Braden is in trouble. Bad people are coming for us. They are going to hurt Leo. You have to help me save him." The script was clever. It pivoted from my grief to my protective instinct. Braden knew my weak spot was Leo. How can I help?" I asked. "The safe," she whispered, her eyes darting to the painting on the wall that concealed the safe door. "The deed to the house. The bonds. Give them to me. I can use them to pay the bad men. If you give them to me, I can rest. I can go away." There it was, the tell. Ghosts do not need bearer bonds. Spirits do not need property deeds. This was a heist disguised as a haunting. Braden was too impatient to wait for the court order. He wanted the liquidity now. He probably had a buyer lined up for the house and a fence for the bonds. I looked at her. I looked at the tears streaming down her face. She was good. Better than the actresses I used to audit in Hollywood payroll disputes. She had the mannerisms down. The way Nia used to tilt her head. The way she bit her lip. Braden had coached her well. "You are freezing," I said, my voice full of fatherly concern. "Here, take this." I picked up a thick wool scarf from the back of my chair. It was a scarf Nia had knitted for me the Christmas before she died. It was gray and lumpy and perfect. I held it out to her. She reached for it, her eyes still fixed on the painting safe. Her greed made her careless. She reached out with her left hand. As her fingers brushed the wool, I lunged. I am 73, but I spent 20 years working on engine blocks and hauling crates. My grip is not something you break easily. I grabbed her wrist. I clamped down hard. She yelped a sound of genuine surprise. "Hey, let go." I pulled her arm into the room under the light of the desk lamp. I looked at her wrist. Right there on the inner forearm, partially obscured by a thick layer of heavy concealer, was a shape. The makeup had smeared slightly from the wet snow and the friction of her coat sleeve. It was a tattoo, a small black outline of a star. Nia hated needles. She fainted when she got her ears pierced. She had skin like flawless obsidian. She never had a tattoo. Not one. I rubbed my thumb hard over the spot. The concealer wiped away, revealing the black ink clearly. I looked up at her face. The mask of the grieving daughter had slipped. Her eyes weren't sad anymore. They were terrified. "Nia didn't have a star on her arm," I said, my voice dropping the tremble, becoming cold and hard as iron. "And she didn't wear a size 7 boot." The woman pulled back, trying to yank her arm free. Her boots scrambled for purchase in the flower bed. "Let go of me," she shrieked. Her voice changed. The soft, rasping imitation of my daughter was gone. This voice was harsh, higher-pitched, with a distinct South Side accent. "You are hurting me." "Who are you?" I demanded, tightening my grip. She winced. I saw the panic flare. She wasn't dealing with a confused old man anymore. She was dealing with a man who had caught her red-handed. "Let go, you crazy old psycho," she yelled. She twisted her body, using her leverage. She clawed at my hand with her free hand, her fingernails digging into my skin. I let her go. Not because I was weak, but because I had what I needed. I had the confirmation. She stumbled back into the snow, falling onto her rear end. The red coat, the sacred red coat that mocked my daughter's memory, bunched up around her. She scrambled to her feet, her eyes wide with shock. She looked at me standing in the window, calm and dangerous. "You are insane," she screamed. Braden was right. "You belong in a cage." She turned and ran. She didn't run toward the street. She ran toward the alleyway behind my house. There was no black SUV waiting this time. She ran toward a beat-up Honda Civic parked illegally by the dumpsters. I watched her go. I watched her fumble with her keys, jump into the car, and speed off the tires spinning on the ice. I closed the window and locked it. I turned back to the room. My hand was throbbing where she had scratched me, but I didn't care. A cold calm settled over me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't senile. I wasn't seeing ghosts. I was the victim of a fraud, a complex, malicious, highly coordinated fraud orchestrated by my son-in-law. I picked up the scarf she had touched. I folded it carefully and put it back on the chair. Then I sat down at my computer. I knew Braden. I knew he was lazy. He liked shortcuts. He wouldn't have found this girl through a legitimate casting agency. That leaves a paper trail. He would have paid her under the table. Venmo, Zelle, Cash App. I knew Braden's passwords. I set up his home network 3 years ago because he was too cheap to hire an IT guy. He used the same password for everything. His dog's name and his birth year. Buster 1982. I logged into his Venmo account. It was a long shot, but arrogance makes people sloppy. I scrolled through the transactions, fancy dinners, golf fees, payments to his bookie listed as consulting. And there it was. A recurring payment, $300 a week for the last month, and a lump sum of $2,000 sent yesterday. The recipient was listed as @Maya Acting Dreams. The memo line for yesterday's payment was blank, but the memo for the weekly payments was rehearsal. I clicked on the profile, Maya, a picture of a young woman with a headshot that looked like it cost $20. She was smiling, trying to look like a star. She had high cheekbones, dark skin, and in the photo on her left wrist was a small tattoo of a star. I leaned back in my chair. "Hello, Maya," I whispered. I opened a new tab and searched for her handle. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. She was everywhere. Maya Daniels, aspiring actress, struggling artist. Her posts were full of complaints about rent, about bad auditions, about needing a big break. One post from 2 days ago caught my eye. A selfie in a bathroom mirror. She was holding a stack of cash. The caption read, "Finally got a gig that pays. Weirdest role of my life, but the rent is due." #blessed acting life. I took a screenshot, I printed it out, then I looked up her address. It wasn't hard. She had tagged her location in half her posts. An apartment complex on the edge of the city, the kind of place where the mailboxes are broken and the elevator smells like urine. I looked at the clock, 3 a.m. Braden thought I was terrified. He thought I was cowering in bed waiting for the men in white coats to come in the morning. He thought he had broken me. He was wrong. I put on my coat. I grabbed the stack of cash from my rainy day fund. I grabbed my Glock just in case. I wasn't going to the lawyer. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. I was going to a casting call. I walked out to the garage. My Buick was gone, presumably halfway to Missouri by now, with the tracker pinging away. I walked over to the corner of the garage and pulled the tarp off my old pickup truck. A 1995 Ford F-150, no GPS. Oh. No OnStar, just steel and rust. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. Braden wanted a performance fine. I was going to rewrite the script, and Maya Daniels was going to be my star witness. I backed out of the garage and headed toward the city. The snow was stopping. The streets were empty. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the auditor, and I was coming to balance the books. The silence that filled my house after the girl in the red coat ran away was heavy, but it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of a crime scene. For 5 years I had been a grieving father, a widower, a man waiting to die. But as I locked the window and pulled the heavy velvet curtains shut, that man ceased to exist. In his place stood the man I used to be, the man who spent 30 years at the IRS and another 10 as a private forensic auditor. I didn't see ghosts. I saw discrepancies. And tonight I was going to balance the ledger. I looked at the clock. 3:15 in the morning. Braden was coming back at 8. That gave me less than 5 hours to build a case, find the witness, and turn the tables. A younger man might have panicked. A weaker man might have called the police only to be dismissed as senile when the girl vanished. But I knew better. You don't go to war without ammunition. I walked into my study and sat at my desk. I didn't turn on the overhead light. I worked by the glow of the monitor. My arthritis usually flared up in the damp winter air, but tonight my fingers flew across the keyboard with the precision of a pianist. The first step was access. Braden thought he was smart because he wore Italian suits and used big words like liquidity and leverage. But Braden was lazy. He was the kind of man who used the same password for everything because remembering two was too much work. When I helped him set up his home network 3 years ago, I saw his system. It was pathetic. His password was always millions82, his goal, and his birth year. I opened a private browser window. I didn't go for his bank accounts. Those would have two-factor authentication pinging his phone, waking him up. I went for the soft underbelly of modern finance. The peer-to-peer apps, Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, the places where people get sloppy. I tried Venmo first. Username Braden Cole Invest. Password millions82. Access granted. I leaned in my glasses, reflecting the stream of data. The transaction history was a roadmap of a man living a lie. While he was telling me he was investing Leo's trust fund in conservative growth bonds, his Venmo told a different story. There were payments to Ace Sports for $500 3 times a week. Gambling. Payments to the Sapphire Club at 2 a.m. on Tuesdays. Strippers. Payments to a contact listed only as Vinny for amounts that made me wince. Loan sharks. I exported the data to a spreadsheet, my old instincts taking over. I was building a profile. Braden wasn't just desperate, he was drowning. He was bleeding cash he didn't have. But I needed the link to tonight. I needed the link to the girl. I filtered the transactions for the last month. I looked for irregularities, recurring payments to a new beneficiary. And there it was. 4 weeks ago, a payment of $200 to Maya Acting Dreams. The memo line read, consultation. 3 weeks ago, another $200. Memo prep. 2 weeks ago, $300. Memo costume. And then yesterday afternoon, a lump sum of $2,000. Memo showtime. I felt a cold rage settle in my gut. Showtime. That's what he called the terrorizing of an old man. That's what he called dressing a stranger in my dead daughter's clothes. To him, my grief was just a performance to be managed. I clicked on the profile for Maya Acting Dreams. It was public. A young woman's face filled the screen. She was pretty with high cheekbones and eager eyes. In her profile picture, she was holding a script, smiling like she was on the verge of her big break. I cross-referenced the handle with Instagram. Maya Daniels, 23 years old, a struggling actress living in the South Side. Her feed was a tragic catalog of near misses and desperation. Rent due again, need a miracle, she posted 3 days ago. Got a weird gig, but it pays the bills, she posted yesterday. I zoomed in on one of her photos. She was holding a coffee cup. On her inner wrist, clear as day, was a small tattoo of a star. Gotcha. I printed everything. The transaction logs, the photos, the posts. I put them in a manila folder. This wasn't just evidence, it was leverage. Now I had a name and a face, but I needed a location. I dug deeper into her social media. She tagged her location at a laundromat on 63rd Street constantly. She posted a photo of her view, a brick wall and a fire escape. I cross-referenced the view with Google Street View, 1402 West 63rd Street, the 3rd. Apartment 2B. I looked at the clock. 4 a.m. I had the who. I had the where. Now I needed to move. But I couldn't just drive there. Braden had told me he put a tracker on my car. He was watching me. If my Buick moved an inch toward the city, he would get an alert. He would call the police. He would say his demented father-in-law had wandered off. The cops would stop me before I got close to Maya. I needed a decoy. I went out to the garage. The cold air was biting, but I didn't feel it. I crawled under the rear bumper of my pristine Buick LaCrosse. I felt around the wheel well until my fingers brushed against a small, cold plastic box. The tracker. I pulled it off. It blinked a slow, steady red light. I walked out to the street. The neighborhood was dead silent, buried under fresh snow. I knew the schedule of this city better than anyone. I knew that at 4:15 the airport shuttle bus passed the corner of Maple and Elm on its way to O'Hare. I waited in the shadows of the oak tree. The bus rumbled down the street, its chains clanking on the asphalt. As it slowed for the stop sign, I ran out. I didn't board. I just slapped the magnetic tracker onto the rear bumper of the bus. I watched it drive away. In 10 minutes, Braden's phone would tell him I was doing 60 miles an hour toward the airport. Let him panic. Let him chase the bus. I went back to the garage. I walked past the empty space where the Buick had been and pulled the dusty tarp off the vehicle in the corner. My 1995 Ford F-150. I hadn't driven it in 3 years. Braden hated it. He called it an eyesore. He begged me to sell it, but I kept it. I told him I liked to tinker. The truth was, I kept it because it was simple. No computer chips, no GPS, no OnStar, just steel and combustion. I opened the door. The hinge groaned. I pumped the gas pedal twice and turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life with a deep, throaty rumble that shook the tools on the wall. It smelled of old gasoline and freedom. I backed out of the garage, the tires crunching over the snow. I didn't turn on the headlights until I was 2 blocks away. The drive to the south side took 40 minutes. The snowplows hadn't reached the side streets yet. The truck fishtailed on the ice, but I held it steady. I drove with the focus of a man on a mission. Every mile I put between myself and that empty, cold house made me feel stronger. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the confused old man Braden wanted to put in a home. I was the auditor. And I was going to verify the assets. The neighborhood changed as I drove south. The manicured lawns of the suburbs gave way to industrial parks, then to rows of boarded-up houses. The streetlights here were yellow and flickering. I found the address. It was a 3-story brick building that looked like it was tired of standing up. The front door was propped open with a cinder block. A flickering neon sign from the liquor store across the street buzzed incessantly. I parked the truck in the alley hidden behind a dumpster. I checked my pocket. The envelope with the $10,000 cash my emergency fund was there. The folder with the evidence was under my arm, and the Glock 19 was tucked into my waistband at the small of my back. I walked into the building. The lobby smelled of stale beer and bleach. The elevator was out of order. I took the stairs, my boots heavy on the concrete steps. 2nd floor. I walked down the dim hallway. I could hear arguments behind closed doors, a baby crying, a dog barking. Life raw and unfiltered. I stopped at door 2B. I could hear the faint sound of a TV inside, a reality show. I recognized the muffled voices. I stood there for a moment, gathering my breath. This was the pivot point. If I was wrong, if she panicked and called the cops Braden won, he would have his proof that I was dangerous and unstable. But if I was right, if money was her motivation, I didn't knock like a polite visitor. I knocked like a landlord collecting rent. 3 hard, authoritative bangs. The TV went silent. I heard footsteps, slow, hesitant. "Who is it?" a voice called out. It was the voice from the window, the voice that had mimicked my daughter. But the Southside edge was back in it now. "Open the door, Maya," I said, my voice low and gravelly. "We have a rehearsal." There was a long silence. Then the sound of a chain sliding. Then the deadbolt turning. She opened the door 2 inches, keeping the chain on. One eye peered out at me. She wasn't wearing the wig or the makeup anymore. She looked young, tired, and scared. "You," she whispered. "How did you find me?" I held up the folder. "You left a paper trail, Maya, and you left footprints." "Go away," she hissed. "Braden said you were crazy. He said you might get violent." "Braden is a liar," I said calmly. "Braden told you I was a senile old man who needed a prank. He didn't tell you he was trying to steal $2 million from a 10-year-old boy, did he?" Her eye widened. $2 million. I pulled the envelope of cash out of my pocket. I fanned the bills just enough for her to see the blue strips on the hundreds. "Braden paid you $2,000 to haunt me," I said. "I have $10,000 right here. It is yours. No strings attached. All you have to do is let me in and listen to the new script." She looked at the money. Then she looked at my face. She was doing the math. She was weighing the risk. The chain slid off. The door opened. I stepped into the lion's den, not with a sword, but with a checkbook. The game was about to change. The air in the apartment was stale heavy with the smell of cheap incense trying to cover up the scent of mildew and desperation. I stepped fully inside and kicked the door shut behind me. The sound made Maya jump. She backed away until her legs hit the edge of her futon. She looked small without the red coat. Just a girl in a stained t-shirt and sweatpants trying to make sense of the nightmare standing in her living room. "You are going to leave," she said, her voice trembling. "You can't be here. Braden said you were violent. He said you have dementia." I walked over to the small table in the center of the room. It was covered in takeout menus and unpaid bills. I cleared a space with my hand, pushing aside a stack of overdue notices. "Braden says a lot of things," I said, my voice low and steady. "He says I am senile. He says he loves my grandson. He says he is a successful investor." I reached into my coat pocket. Maya flinched, thinking I was going for a weapon. I wasn't. I pulled out a photograph. It was an 8x10 glossy print. I placed it face up on the table. "Look at it," I commanded. Maya hesitated. Curiosity won out over fear. She took a step forward and looked down. It was a crime scene photo. The Illinois State Police took it 5 years ago. It showed a twisted pile of metal that used to be a sedan wrapped around a concrete pillar on I-90. The windshield was shattered. Inside, you could just make out the sleeve of a red wool coat. "That is the role you are playing," I said. "That is Nia. That is my daughter." She didn't die peacefully in her sleep, Maya. She died screaming in metal and glass. And you are walking around in her clothes pretending to be her ghost for a few $100 a week. Maya recoiled as if the photo had burned her. She covered her mouth. Tears welled up in her eyes. Real tears this time. Not the stage tears she had used at my window. I didn't know she whispered. He didn't show me that. He just said she passed away. He said you needed closure. He said it was like therapy. Exposure therapy. Therapy. I repeated, letting the word taste like bile in my mouth. He calls terrorizing an old man therapy. I looked around the apartment. Peeling paint. A radiator that hissed and clanked. A headshot taped to the wall where she looked hopeful and clean. You are a good actress, Maya, I said. You had the walk down. You had the voice. You almost had me fooled for a second in the snow. She looked at me confused by the compliment. But you are working for the wrong producer, I continued. Braden Cole is cheap. I saw the Venmo transactions. $300 a week, $2,000 for the big finale. That is insultingly low for a felony fraud conspiracy. I reached into my other pocket. This time I pulled out the envelope. It was thick, heavy. I didn't take the money out yet. I just set it on the table next to the photo of the car crash. What is that? She asked. Her eyes locked on the bulge of the envelope. That is $10,000, I said. Cash. Untraceable. Non-sequential hundreds. It is the money I keep in a cookie jar in my basement for emergencies. And right now, you are my emergency. 10,000, she breathed. I picked up the envelope and tapped it against the table. Braden is paying you to make me crazy. He is paying you to help him steal $2 million from a 10-year-old boy. He is using you as a tool, Maya. And when he is done with you, do you think he is going to pay you the rest? Or do you think he is going to make you disappear because you are the only loose end that can send him to prison? Her face went pale. The reality of her situation was crashing down on her. She wasn't just an actress in a weird gig anymore. She was an accomplice in a high-stakes game she didn't understand. I can't, she stammered, backing away again. I can't take your money. I just want out. I will leave town. I promise. I won't come back. Leaving isn't an option, I said. Braden has a tracker on my car. He has access to my bank accounts. If you run, he will find you. And if he thinks you burned him, he will hurt you. I took a step toward her. I am offering you a job, Maya. A better job. I will pay you double what he promised. I will give you this $10,000 right now. And another $10,000 when we are done. Done with what she asked. I want you to finish the performance, I said. But we are going to change the ending. We are going to rewrite the script. She shook her head violently. No, no way. You don't understand. It is not just about the money. Then what is it? I asked. She looked at the door, then back at me. She hugged herself, rubbing her arms. She looked like a child who had been caught stealing candy but was terrified of the punishment. He has my passport, she whispered. I frowned. Your passport and my record, she continued, the words spilling out fast now. I got into some trouble a few years ago, selling pills, prescription stuff, oxy. I was broke, okay. I got caught, but I made a deal. I have probation. If I get in trouble again, I go away for 5 years. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. Braden knows. He did a background check on me before he hired me. He has the file. He has photos of me meeting a guy who sells. I wasn't buying, I swear, but it looks bad. He said if I don't do exactly what he says, he will send the photos to my probation officer. He will plant stuff in my apartment and call the cops. He said he would ruin me. I stood there processing this. It made perfect sense. Braden didn't just want an actress. He wanted a slave. He wanted someone he could control completely. Someone who couldn't go to the police because she had more to lose than he did. That was why he picked her. Not just for her height or her skin tone, but for her vulnerability. He is gaslighting you too, I said softly. He creates the problem and then sells you the solution. It is the oldest trick in the book. I walked over to the window and looked out at the alley. My truck was hidden behind the dumpster. The city was waking up. Delivery trucks were starting to roll. Maya, I said, turning back to her, you are scared of the police. You are scared of prison. I understand that. I walked back to the table and picked up the envelope. I held it out to her. But you need to understand who I am. I am not just a grandfather. I spent 40 years auditing the books for the federal government. I know how to find things people want hidden, and I know how to make problems go away. She looked at the money, then at my face. If you help me, I said, I will make sure Braden never touches you. I will get your passport back, and I will make sure that file on your past disappears. I know people, Maya. I know cops. I know judges. If you are my witness, you are protected. If you are Braden's accomplice, you are collateral damage. She reached out her hand, shaking. She took the envelope. She opened it and looked inside. The blue strips of the $100 bills glowed in the dim light. What do I have to do? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf who just found the scent of blood. You are going to haunt him, I said. You are going to be Nia, but not the Nia he wrote. You are going to be the Nia he fears. I pulled a chair over and sat down. Sit down, Maya. We have work to do. I am going to teach you everything about my daughter, her favorite color, the name of her first pet, the song she hummed when she was nervous. And I am going to tell you the things only she would know, the things Braden thinks are buried in the dark. She sat on the futon, clutching the envelope to her chest. Why, she asked. Why go through all this? Why not just turn him in? Because justice is slow, I said, and Braden is fast. If I go to the cops now, it is my word against his. He has the legal papers. He has the doctor's note. He wins. I leaned forward. I need him to break. I need him to confess. I need him to believe that he is losing his mind, just like he tried to make me believe I was losing mine. I need him to look at you and see his own sins staring back at him. Maya nodded slowly. She looked at the red coat hanging on the door. Okay, she said. I will do it. Good, I said. First things first. Put the coat on. We need to fix the walk. Nia didn't shuffle. She strode. She walked like she owned the sidewalk. Maya stood up. She walked over to the bag and unzipped it. She pulled out the red coat. She slipped her arms into it. It was too big in the shoulders, but she belted it tight. She turned to face me. She adjusted her collar. She lifted her chin. Like this, she asked. For a second, just a fraction of a second, my heart stopped. In the dim light with her chin up and that coat on, she looked so much like her. It hurt. It hurt more than the cold, more than the betrayal. Yes, I choked out. Like that. Now, I said, clearing my throat. Let's talk about the car accident. Let's talk about the brakes. Maya frowned. The brakes, Braden said she fell asleep at the wheel. I looked at the photo on the table. The twisted metal, the shattered glass. Braden says a lot of things, I said. But tonight we are going to ask him why he took his car to the mechanic the day before she died. And we are going to ask him why he was the last person to touch those brakes. Maya's eyes widened. You think he killed her? I don't think, I said. I am auditing him, and the numbers don't add up. I pulled out my phone and opened a video file. It was a clip from Nia's birthday party 6 years ago. She was laughing, blowing out candles. Braden was standing behind her, smiling that salesman smile, his hand on her shoulder. Watch this, I said. Watch how she moves. Watch how she looks at him. She didn't trust him, Maya. Not at the end. She was planning to leave him. I paused, looking at Maya. And tonight, you are going to tell him that you remember. The sun was coming up. The light filtered through the dirty blinds, painting stripes across the room. We had a script to write, and curtain call was tonight. The sun had fully risen over the south side, casting long, dusty beams of light across Maya's cramped studio apartment. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and intensity. We had been at it for 4 hours. I was exhausted. My joints ached from sitting on the hard wooden chair, and my eyes burned from staring at the small screen of my phone. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. We were building a ghost, and ghosts require precision. You are slouching, I snapped. Nia never slouched. She was proud. She walked like she owned the concrete beneath her feet. Shoulders back, chin up. When she looked at you, she didn't blink. She made you look away first. Maya straightened her spine. She took a deep breath and walked across the room again. The red coat swished around her legs. The rhythm was better, stronger, better, I said. Better, Now the hands. Nia talked with her hands, but she never fidgeted. If she was mad, she went still. She would touch her left earlobe, just once, like this. I demonstrated the movement, a small, subtle tug on the earlobe. It was a tic Nia had since she was 6 years old. Braden hated it. He used to say it made him nervous because he knew a fight was coming. That was exactly why Maya needed to master it. We weren't just trying to scare him with a voice. We were trying to trigger his muscle memory of fear. Maya mimicked the motion. She touched her ear, her eyes narrowing. "Good," I said. "Now the voice." Nia's voice was lower than yours, smokier. And when she spoke to Braden toward the end, there was no affection. It was cold, flat, like she was reading a grocery list to a stranger. I played another video from my phone. It was a clip from a barbecue 2 weeks before the accident. Nia was arguing with Braden in the background. You could barely hear the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Disdain, disappointment. Listen to the cadence, I told Maya. She doesn't scream, she cuts. She uses silence as a weapon. Maya nodded. She closed her eyes, muttering to herself, dropping her pitch, smoothing out the rough edges of her accent. She was a quick study. Desperation makes you focused, and Maya was desperate to get out from under Braden's thumb. "Why will this work?" she asked, opening her eyes. "He knows I am an actress. He hired me. He knows I am not her." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Braden Cole thinks he is a rational man," I said. "He thinks he is a master of the universe, but he is a gambler. And gamblers are superstitious. I have seen him refuse to close a deal on Friday the 13th. I have seen him throw salt over his shoulder in a 5-star restaurant. He carries a rabbit's foot in his briefcase next to his tablet." I stood up and paced the small room. "Guilt is a powerful hallucination, Maya. He knows what he did to her. He knows he is responsible. That knowledge is eating him alive. He drinks to drown it. He gambles to outrun it. When he sees you, when he hears you, his rational brain will fight it. But his lizard brain, the part of him that is terrified of judgment, that part will believe. We just have to give him enough details that are impossible for a stranger to know." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside was a SIM card. "I paid the bill on this number for 5 years," I said, looking at the chip. I told myself it was because I couldn't let go, because I wanted to hear her voicemail greeting, but maybe deep down the auditor in me knew I would need the data. I handed the bag to Maya. "Put this in your phone. Tonight when you call him, his caller ID won't say unknown. It won't say spam. It will say Nia." Maya took the SIM card, her fingers trembling slightly. "This is messed up," she whispered. "It is justice," I replied. We spent the next hour going over the script. Not the lines Braden had given her, the generic pleas for help. We worked on the specific intimate terrors of their marriage. I told her about the nickname he hated. I told her about the time he lost $50,000 on a single hand of poker and tried to blame it on identity theft. I told her about the anniversary dinner where she told him she wanted a divorce. And I told her about the breaks. I didn't have the forensic report yet. I didn't have the mechanic's testimony, but I had the gut instinct that had never failed me in 40 years. Braden took Nia's car to a shop the day before she died. He said it was for an oil change. But Braden didn't do errands. He didn't do favors. He only did things that benefited Braden. "You need to deliver this line perfectly," I said. "You cannot stutter. You cannot hesitate. You have to say it like you are standing right behind him." Maya took a deep breath. She looked at the photo of the crash on the table. She looked at me. "I am ready," she said. I left her apartment at 6 p.m. I drove the truck back toward the suburbs, taking the long way to avoid traffic cameras. I parked 3 streets over from my house and walked the rest of the way through the neighbors' yards, moving through the shadows. My house was dark. Braden hadn't come back yet. He was probably at his own house celebrating his victory, drinking my wine, waiting for the clock to run out on my sanity. I slipped inside the back door. The silence was absolute. I went to my study and unlocked the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. I pulled out my old surveillance kit, a high-gain directional microphone, and a signal receiver. I had planted the bugs in Braden's house 6 months ago during a 4th of July party, one in his home office, one in the master bedroom. At the time, I told myself I was just being a paranoid old man protecting Leo's inheritance. Now I knew I was just conducting a long-term audit. I put on the headphones and tuned the frequency, static, then the sound of a television, the clinking of glass. I heard Braden's voice. He was on the phone. "Yeah, the old man is cracking," he laughed. He was seeing things in the blizzard. "I have the doctor lined up. Tomorrow morning we file the papers. By noon he will be in custody." "Yeah. The trust fund transfer is ready." I felt a surge of cold hatred. He was celebrating my demise. He was toasting to my imprisonment. "Hang tight, Braden," I whispered. "The show is about to start." I texted Maya. One word. Action. Through the headphones, I heard Braden sigh. I heard the sound of ice settling in a glass. He was in his office. He was relaxed. He thought he had won. Then I heard his cell phone ring. It wasn't a standard ringtone. It was the specific custom ringtone he had assigned to Naya years ago. Claire de Lune. He hadn't heard that sound in 5 years. The glass clinked against the desk. Silence. The music played on. Soft. Haunting. Hello, Braden's voice was tight, confused. "Who is this?" I held my breath. Nia's voice came through the speaker, filtered through the cellular network, distorted just enough to sound otherworldly. Maya was perfect. The pitch was low, the cadence was flat. "Hello, Brady." I heard a sharp intake of breath, the sound of a chair scraping back. Is this a joke?" "Who the hell is this?" Braden shouted. His bravado was cracking instantly. "You promised you would save us," Maya said, her voice dripping with cold disappointment. "You said you would fix the debt, but you didn't fix it, did you? You just fixed the car." Braden was hyperventilating now. I could hear his shallow, rapid breaths. "Stop it," he yelled. "Who put you up to this, Isaiah? Is that you?" "It is cold down here, Brady," Maya whispered. "The metal is so cold. And my legs. I can't feel my legs. Why didn't you answer the phone that night I called you? I called you right after the crash. I didn't know that detail." Maya was improvising, channeling the fear I had described to her. It was brutal. It was effective. "Stop calling me," Braden screamed. "You are dead. I buried you." "Did you?" Maya asked. "Or did you just bury the evidence?" Silence. Heavy, terrified silence. Then the kill shot. "Why did you cut the brake line?" Brady Maya asked. Her voice was soft, almost curious. I felt the pedal go to the floor. I felt it snap. "Why did you do it? Was I worth more dead than alive?" I heard a crash. Braden had dropped the phone. Then the sound of shattering glass. He must have thrown his drink. "No. No. No." He was screaming, his voice high and shrill. "It wasn't me. I didn't touch them. It was an accident." He was arguing with a dead woman. He was defending himself to a ghost. Through the open line of his dropped phone, I heard him scrambling backwards. I heard him hit the desk. "Stay away from me," he yelled. Then the line went dead. I took off the headphones. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be still. I had him. I had the reaction of a guilty man. An innocent man gets angry at a prank call. A guilty man gets terrified. A guilty man starts confessing to the empty air. He hadn't admitted to cutting the line explicitly, not yet, but he hadn't denied the motive. He hadn't asked what brake line he knew. He knew exactly what she was talking about. I looked at the clock. 9 p.m. The seed was planted. The paranoia was taking root. Now I had to water it. I picked up my phone and texted Maya. "Cut. Good take. Go to sleep. Tomorrow we film the sequel." I stood up and walked to the window. The snow had stopped. The moon was out, casting long shadows across the yard. Braden wasn't going to sleep tonight. He was going to be pacing his office, staring at the shadows, wondering if the woman he killed was coming back to collect the debt. He thought he could use fear against me. He thought he could break my mind. He forgot that fear is a two-way street, and traffic was heading his way. I wasn't just an auditor anymore. I was the reaper, and I was coming to collect. The banging on my front door started at 8 a.m. sharp. It wasn't a knock. It was an assault. The wood groaned under the force of a fist driven by panic and a sleepless night. I was sitting in my armchair in the living room, a cup of Earl Grey tea steaming in my hands. I was wearing my old cardigan and my reading glasses. I looked every inch the fragile, confused retiree Braden wanted the world to see. But under the cushion of my chair was my tablet, and on the screen was the live feed from the camera I had hidden in the entryway. I saw Braden on the screen. He looked like a man who had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had stared back. His hair was disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot, surrounded by dark bruises of exhaustion. He wasn't wearing his usual pristine Italian suit. He was wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt. He looked unraveled. I took a slow sip of tea. I let him pound for another 10 seconds. I wanted his heart rate up. I wanted his adrenaline spiking. Then I stood up, shuffling my feet, intentionally dragging my slippers to make the sound of an old man moving. I opened the door. Braden pushed past me without a word, almost knocking me over. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how I was. He stormed into the center of the living room and spun around, his eyes wild, scanning the corners of the ceiling. "Where is it?" he hissed. "Where did you put it?" I blinked, adjusting my glasses. "Where is what, Braden? You are scaring me, son. Why are you shouting?" He laughed, a short, barking sound that had no humor in it. "Don't play games with me, Isaiah. Not today. I know you did it. I know you set it up. Where is the speaker? Where is the recorder?" He started tearing the room apart. He ripped the cushions off the sofa, throwing them onto the floor. He swept my collection of porcelain figurines off the mantel, shattering them against the hearth. He wasn't looking for money. He was looking for wires. He was looking for the technology that had allowed a dead woman to call his cell phone last night. I stood by the door, my hands shaking slightly, not from fear but from the effort of holding back my satisfaction. "Braden, please," I stammered. "Those were Martha's. Why are you breaking things?" "Shut up!" he screamed. He dropped to his knees and looked under the coffee table. He ran his hands along the baseboards. "Who helped you? Was it that girl? The one in the snow? Did you pay her? Is she hiding in here?" He ran to the hallway, tearing open the closet door, pushing aside the winter coats. He checked the bathroom. He checked the kitchen, tearing open the cabinets, slamming them shut. I walked over to my chair and sat down. I picked up my tea. My hand was steady now. I watched him run in circles, chasing phantoms. He was unraveling faster than I expected. The guilt was a heavy burden, and he didn't have the spine to carry it. He came back into the living room, breathing hard, sweat beading on his forehead. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You think you are smart," he said, his voice trembling. "You think you can gaslight me. I know it was a recording. Nia is dead. I know she is dead." I looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Of course she is dead, Braden. We buried her. Why would you say she isn't?" "Because she called me," he shouted. "She called me last night. She talked about the brakes. She talked about the accident. Only you would know about that. You are trying to frame me." I took a sip of tea. "My tea is getting cold," I mumbled. "Braden, I think you need to sit down. You are talking nonsense. Nobody called you." He stared at me, his chest heaving. He looked at the room he had destroyed. He looked at me, sitting calmly in the chaos. Doubt flickered in his eyes. Just a spark. He was expecting a fight. He was expecting me to reveal my hand to gloat, but I gave him nothing but confusion. He ran his hands through his hair. "I am not crazy," he whispered, more to himself than to me. I heard her. I reached into my pocket and touched my phone. I didn't take it out. I just pressed the volume button on the side 3 times. A shortcut I had programmed earlier that morning. On the bookshelf behind Braden, tucked between a row of old encyclopedias, was a smart speaker, a small charcoal sphere that blended into the shadows. I had disabled its lights. Music began to play. It wasn't loud. It started soft, barely a whisper. A piano melody, melancholy, slow. Then the voice came in. "Donny Hathaway, a song for you." It was Nia's favorite song. It was the song we played at her wedding, and according to the police report, it was the song that was playing on her car stereo when they pulled her body from the wreckage. The CD had skipped on the chorus, repeating the same line over and over. "I love you in a place where there's no space or time." Braden froze. His back went rigid. He slowly turned around, looking at the bookshelf. "Turn it off," he whispered. I took another sip of tea. I looked at him blankly. "Turn what off, son?" "The music," he shouted, spinning back to face me. "The music, Isaiah. Turn it off. It is her song." I cocked my head to the side as if listening intently. I frowned. "I don't hear any music, Braden. It is quiet in here. Just the wind outside." Braden's face went white. A sickly, pasty white. The blood drained from his lips. "Don't lie to me," he screamed. "It is playing right now. Donny Hathaway. It is right there." He pointed at the bookshelf. The music swelled, getting louder, filling the room. "I love you for my life. You are a friend of mine." I stood up slowly, putting my teacup down. I walked over to him. I put a hand on his shoulder. He flinched away from me as if I were radioactive. "Braden," I said, my voice full of gentle pity. "There is no music. The radio is off. The TV is off. Look," I gestured around the room. Braden looked at the bookshelf. He looked at the empty air. The song was loud now, echoing off the walls. To him it must have sounded like a concert. "You don't hear that?" he asked, his voice cracking. "You really don't hear that?" I shook my head. "I hear a car driving by outside. I hear the furnace kicking on. But I don't hear any music, son." "Are you feeling okay? You look very pale." Braden backed away from me. He put his hands over his ears, pressing hard. "Stop it!" he yelled at the empty room. "Stop singing!" The music didn't stop. I had set the volume to increase gradually over 2 minutes. It was reaching its peak now. Braden stumbled backward, tripping over the cushion he had thrown on the floor. He fell hard, landing on his elbows. He scrambled backward like a crab, trying to get away from the bookshelf. "Make it stop, Isaiah, please, make it stop," he begged. I looked down at him. This was the man who had looked me in the eye yesterday and told me I belonged in a cage. This was the man who tried to steal my life. And now he was on my floor, cowering from a song. I knelt down in front of him. I looked him dead in the eye. "Braden, I think you are having a breakdown," I said. "The stress of the debt, the guilt, it is making you hear things. It is making you imagine things. First the phone call, now the music." I leaned closer, dropping my voice to a whisper. Maybe Dr. Sterling was right, but maybe he was examining the wrong patient. Braden stared at me, his eyes wide and terrified. He took his hands off his ears for a second, and the music blasted him. He screamed a high-pitched sound of pure terror. He scrambled to his feet, knocking over a lamp. "I have to get out of here," he panted. "I have to go." He ran for the door, fumbling with the lock, his hands shaking so bad he couldn't turn the knob. Finally, he got it open. He threw himself out into the cold morning air, stumbling down the steps. I watched him run to his car. He almost slipped on the ice. He got in and slammed the door. He sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, probably trying to see if the music would stop. I pressed the volume button on my phone in my pocket. The music cut out instantly. Silence slammed back into the room. Braden looked back at the house. He looked at the window where I was standing. I saw the question in his eyes. Was it real? Was any of it real? He started the engine and peeled out of the driveway, leaving black tire marks on the pristine snow. I locked the door. I walked over to the bookshelf and retrieved the smart speaker. I turned it off completely. I picked up the cushion he had tripped over and put it back on the sofa. I picked up the lamp. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was dismantling him, piece by piece, sanity by sanity. He thought he could use the system against me. He thought he could use doctors and judges to define my reality. But he forgot that reality is subjective. Reality is what you can prove. And right now, the only proof Braden Cole had was that he was hearing voices and music that didn't exist. I went to the kitchen and poured the rest of my tea down the sink. I didn't want tea, I wanted coffee. I had work to do. I needed to go to the junkyard. Maya's performance last night had shaken him. The music had cracked him. But to finish him, I needed hard evidence. I needed to know if the ghost story I invented was actually a history lesson. Maya had asked him why he cut the brake line. It was a guess, a dramatic flourish I added to the script. But Braden's reaction, the way he screamed that he didn't touch them, that wasn't the reaction of a confused man. That was the reaction of a man defending himself against a specific accusation. He didn't say, "What brake line?" He said, "I didn't touch them." He knew. I grabbed my coat. I grabbed my keys to the truck. I was going to find Nia's car. And if I found a cut line, Braden wasn't going to a mental hospital. He was going to death row. The drive to Miller's salvage yard took 45 minutes. The city woke up around me, but I did not see it. I saw only the terrified face of my son-in-law from the night before. I saw his eyes widen when the ghost of my daughter asked him about the brakes. An innocent man would have been confused. He would have asked what she was talking about. But Braden did not ask. He denied. He screamed that he did not touch them. That was a specific denial to a specific accusation. It was the slip of a tongue that knew too much. I pulled my truck up to the chain-link gate. Old Man Miller was sitting in the guard shack smoking a cigar that smelled like burning tires. He had been holding on to Nia's car for 5 years. Everyone told me to crush it. They said keeping it was morbid. They said I needed to let go. But I paid the monthly storage fee in cash every first of the month. Maybe it was grief. Or maybe it was the auditor in me knowing that you never destroy the original documents until the case is closed. Ike Miller grunted, stepping out of the shack. "You are here early. Usually you come on the first. I need to see the car, Miller," I said, climbing out of the truck. "I need to get under it." Miller looked at me, his eyes narrowing through the smoke. He didn't ask why. He knew I was a man who didn't answer questions he didn't want to answer. "It is in the back row," he said, pointing with his cigar. "Lot 42, under the blue tarp, just like always." I walked through the maze of rusted metal and shattered glass. It was a graveyard of machines. I reached Lot 42. The blue tarp was covered in a thin layer of snow. I brushed it off. My hands were shaking. Not from the cold, from the dread. Under this tarp was the place my daughter took her last breath. I pulled the tarp back. The wreck was exactly as I remembered it. The front end was accordion compressed. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. The driver's side door had been cut away by the firefighters to get her out. I forced myself to look past the tragedy. I forced myself to be a mechanic. I was 20 years in the motor pool before I was an auditor. I know how machines work, and I know how they break. I put on a pair of heavy work gloves. I grabbed a flashlight and a creeper from the bed of my truck. I lay down on the creeper and slid myself under the twisted chassis of the Honda Accord. It was dark and cramped. The smell of oil and old rust filled my nose. I shined the light on the undercarriage. The official police report said mechanical failure. It said the brake line had corroded and snapped under pressure, causing a catastrophic loss of hydraulic fluid. It happens, especially in Chicago, with the salt on the roads. I found the master cylinder. I traced the lines running to the rear wheels. The metal lines were rusty, sure, but they were intact. I followed the rubber flex hose on the rear passenger side. There it was, the failure point. The hose was severed. I moved the light closer. I adjusted my glasses. A corroded line bursts. It frays. The edges are jagged like a torn sweater. It looks like an explosion from the inside out. This line was not frayed. It was sliced. It was a diagonal cut. Clean, sharp, but not perfect. There was a slight sawing motion at the start of the cut, like someone had hesitated, or like the knife was serrated. I ran my gloved finger over the cut. The rubber was smooth. This wasn't rust. This was a blade. My heart started pounding a heavy rhythm against the cold concrete. Murder. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad luck. It was murder. But a cut line wasn't enough. Any defense attorney would argue it was road debris. I needed something that tied it to him. I needed a signature. I looked closer at the fitting where the hose connected to the caliper. It was greasy, dirty, but there was a strange sheen to the grime, a purple tint. I took off my glove. I rubbed my bare thumb against the fitting. The substance was thick, sticky. I brought my thumb to my nose. It smelled sweet, synthetic, like grapes and chemicals. I knew that smell. I closed my eyes and I was back in Braden's garage 3 months before the accident. He was showing off his pride and joy, a 1969 Camaro. He was obsessed with that car. He wouldn't let anyone touch it. He used a specific type of assembly lubricant for the restoration. He bragged about it. Royal Purple, he had said, holding up the bottle. Synthetic, high performance. It stays where you put it, Ike. It never breaks down. He used it on everything. Bolts, hinges, linkages. I looked at the brake fitting again. The purple sludge was caked around the nut. Why would there be high-performance assembly lube on the brake line of a family sedan? A sedan that supposedly hadn't been serviced in 6 months. Because the nut had been loosened. To cut the line cleanly, you need slack. You need to twist it. Braden had tried to loosen the fitting, probably to detach the line and cut it on a workbench, then reattach it. But it was rusted, stuck. So he used his fancy lubricant to work it loose. He cut the line, then tightened it back up. And he forgot to wipe away the excess. He left his fingerprint in oil. I scraped a sample of the purple sludge into a small plastic evidence bag I kept in my wallet. I slid out from under the car. I sat up on the cold ground, breathing hard. The air felt thin. My daughter didn't just die, she was executed. And the man who did it was sleeping in my guest room last Christmas. The man who did it was raising my grandson. I stood up. I covered the car back up. I didn't say goodbye to Nia. Not yet. I would say goodbye when I put him in a cage. I drove back to the city. I didn't go home. I went to the public library. I needed a computer that Braden couldn't track. I needed to finish the audit. I had the murder weapon. Now I needed the motive. I logged into the public terminal. I pulled up the probate records from 5 years ago. They were public record. Nia had a life insurance policy, $1 million, plus the settlement from the accident, another $1 million. $2 million. Braden was the beneficiary. He told me at the time he was putting it all into a trust for Leo. He showed me the paperwork. I pulled up the trust fund records again. I looked deeper this time. I looked at the initial deposit dates. March 1st, 5 years ago. A deposit of $2 million. March 2nd. A withdrawal of $500,000. Transferred to BC Holdings LLC. March 15th. Another $500,000. Transferred to Alpha Ventures. By June of that year, the trust was empty. The account Braden showed me, the statements he emailed me every month, they were forgeries, Photoshop jobs. He had been showing me a ghost account for 5 years. He didn't just steal the money recently, he stole it immediately. He killed her on February 14th. He buried her on February 18th. And by March 2nd, he was already spending her blood money. I looked up BC Holdings LLC. It was a shell company registered in Delaware. It dissolved 2 years ago. Alpha Ventures was a failed crypto startup Braden had bragged about. He blew it. He blew $2 million on bad bets and worse investments. And now he was broke. That was why he was coming for my house. That was why he was coming for my pension. He had burned through the fortune he murdered his wife for, and now he needed more fuel for the fire. I sat back in the library chair. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I felt a cold calm settle over me. It was the same feeling I used to get when I found the missing zero in a tax return the moment you realize the numbers don't lie. Braden Cole was a dead man walking. He just didn't know it yet. He thought he was fighting a confused old man. He thought he was winning a game of gaslight. He didn't realize that I had just upgraded the charges. This wasn't a custody battle anymore. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a homicide investigation, and I was the lead detective. I printed the documents, the probate records, the fake trust statements. I put them in the folder with the photo of the footprints and the sample of purple oil. I had the means, the cut brake line. I had the opportunity. The day he took the car, I had the motive. $2 million gone in 6 months. But I needed one more thing. I needed a confession. The law is tricky. A good lawyer could argue the oil was circumstantial. He could argue the money was just bad management, not a motive for murder. He could claim the brake line was cut by road debris. I needed him to say it. I needed him to say the words out loud, and I knew exactly how to make him do it. He was terrified. Last night proved that. He was cracking. He believed Nia was haunting him. I needed to push him over the edge. I needed to isolate him. I took out my phone. I saw a notification. A text from Leo, my grandson. He had a secret phone I gave him for his birthday, a cheap burner phone Braden didn't know about. Grandpa, the text read, Dad is acting weird. He is packing bags. He says we are moving to Florida tomorrow. He says you are sick and we can't see you anymore. I stared at the screen. Florida. Non-extradition for certain financial crimes if you play it right. But mostly, it was just running. He was running away from the ghost. He was taking Leo. If he took Leo, I would never see him again. He would disappear. No, I typed back. Don't worry, Leo. You aren't going anywhere. I am coming to get you. I stood up. I left the library. Braden wanted to leave fine, but he had one last appointment. I was going to use the one thing he cared about more than money, his own survival. I drove to the hardware store. I bought a few things, a heavy-duty breaker bar, a pair of wire cutters, and a high-voltage generator meant for cattle fences. Then I drove to my house. I parked the truck down the street. I walked to the back door. I went to the basement. I found the main breaker box for the house. I was going to set the stage for the final act. Tonight, the lights were going out. Tonight, the phones were going to die. Tonight, Braden Cole was going to be alone in the dark with the wife he murdered. And I would be there to record every scream. The text message from Leo burned on my screen like a brand. Florida. He was taking him to Florida. He wasn't just running away from his debts or the ghost of his wife. He was kidnapping the only reason I had left to breathe. Braden knew that the legal system was slow. He knew that by the time I got a court order stopping him, he would be 3 states away, buried under a new LLC and a fake address. He was going to erase me from my grandson's life. I sat in the cab of my truck, parked 3 streets away from my own house, and felt a surge of adrenaline that was sharp and metallic. This was the nuclear option. Braden had realized he couldn't trick me into the nursing home fast enough, so he was holding a gun to my heart. Sign the papers or lose the boy. My phone rang in my hand. It was him. I answered. I didn't say hello. You are pushing me. Isaiah, Braden spat. His voice was tight, high-pitched. It lacked the smooth, oily confidence of the boardroom. It was the voice of a man who was looking over his shoulder. I know you are up to something. I know you were at the bank. I was checking my balance, Braden, I said calmly. Is that a crime? It is when you are mentally incompetent, he shouted. The court order is coming. But I am done waiting. We are leaving. Tonight. I have packed Leo's things. We are driving to Orlando. My sister lives there. We are going to stay with her until you are situated. You can't take him, I said, gripping the steering wheel. I have visitation rights. Sue me, he laughed, a jagged, broken sound. By the time you get a hearing, Leo will be in a new school. He will forget you. I will tell him you didn't want to see him. I will tell him you were too sick. The cruelty was breathtaking. He wasn't just a thief, he was a sadist. Unless, he said, his voice dropping. Unless you want to fix this right now. Fix it how I asked, though I knew the price. Sign the transfer, Braden said. Sign over the trust. Sign the power of attorney. Do it tonight. If you do, I will let you say goodbye. I might even bring him back for Christmas. If you don't, well, Florida's a big state. People get lost there. I closed my eyes. He was ransoming my grandson with my daughter's death benefit. I need time, I said. You have 1 hour, he snapped. Call me back. Or don't. It is your funeral. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. My hands were steady, but my chest felt like it was caved in. He had me. If he left the state, I lost. I couldn't chase him and fight the competency hearing at the same time. He would drain the trust fund from a laptop in a motel room and disappear. Then the other phone buzzed. It was the cheap prepaid flip phone I had taped under Leo's bed frame 6 months ago. I told him it was for emergencies. I told him it was our secret agent hotline. I flipped it open. Grandpa Leo whispered, Leo. I said, my voice softening instantly. Are you okay? Where are you? I am in the closet, he whispered. Dad is acting weird. He is packing my clothes. He is throwing things in suitcases. He keeps dropping stuff. Is he hurt? I asked. No, Leo said. But he is scary. He is talking to himself. Talking to himself. Yeah. He was in the bathroom. I heard him screaming. He was looking in the mirror. He was yelling, leave me alone, and I didn't mean to. But there was nobody there, Grandpa. Just him. I felt a cold thrill of satisfaction. The seeds I planted were blooming. The ghost was in the room with him. Maya's performance, the music, the guilt, it was cooking his brain. He was cracking under the pressure of his own lies. Grandpa Leo asked, his voice trembling. Dad says you are sick. He says you are dangerous. He says you have a disease in your brain that makes you forget people. Are you going to forget me? Tears stung my eyes. This man, this monster was poisoning my grandson's memories of me to cover his tracks. No, Leo, I said fiercely. I am never going to forget you. And I am not sick. Your dad is just very stressed. Leo sniffled. I want to come home. I want to come to your house. You will, I promised. Tonight. Listen to me, Leo. Stay in the closet. Keep the phone hidden. If they try to put you in the car, you call me. Okay. Okay, Grandpa. I hung up. I sat there in the silence of the truck cab. The storm outside was picking up again. The wind was whipping the snow into a frenzy. Braden was braking. He was hallucinating. He was paranoid. But a paranoid man with a hostage is the most dangerous thing on earth. He was cornered. He was ready to run. If he got in that car with Leo, he might crash. He might hurt the boy. He wasn't stable enough to drive to the grocery store, let alone Florida. I had to stop him. I had to bring him to me. I looked at the house. My house. The house I bought with Martha 40 years ago. The house where Nia took her first steps. It was the only leverage I had left. I needed to give him what he wanted. Or at least what he thought he wanted. I picked up my smartphone. I dialed Braden's number. It rang 4 times. He was making me wait. Yeah, he answered. You win, Braden, I said. My voice was heavy, defeated. I dragged the words out, making them sound like they cost me everything. You win. I can't let you take him. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing. He was savoring the moment. "I knew you would see reason, Isaiah," he said, the smugness creeping back into his tone. "It is for the best. I will sign," I said. "The trust, the power of attorney, all of it. Just promise me you won't take him away." "I promise," he said instantly. A lie. It came too easy. "Bring the papers," I said. "Come to the house, tonight." "Tonight?" he asked. "It is storming. I can come in the morning." "No," I snapped. "Tonight. If I wait until morning, I might change my mind. I might call my lawyer. I want it done now, Braden. Before I lose my nerve. And bring your lawyer. I want it notarized. I want it legal. I don't want any questions later." I was gambling. I was betting that his greed would override his caution. I was betting that the prospect of getting $2 million tonight would make him brave enough to face the weather and the old man. "Bring the lawyer," he asked. "That is expensive after hours." "You are getting $2 million, I said. "You can afford the overtime. Bring him. I want it done right." "Fine," he said. "We will be there in an hour. Have the scotch ready. We have to celebrate." He hung up. I put the phone down. Celebrate. He wanted to toast to his victory over my dead body. I looked out the windshield. The snow was coming down hard. A whiteout. Perfect conditions for a disaster. I got out of the truck. I walked to the back of the house. I went down the bulkhead stairs into the basement. I walked over to the fuse box. It was an old unit, gray metal humming with electricity. Braden was bringing a lawyer. That was good. A witness. Someone to see him fall apart. Someone to hear the confession. But lawyers are tricky. They protect their clients. I needed to strip Braden of his protection. I needed to strip him of his reality. I took the wire cutters from my tool belt. I looked at the main breaker, the master switch. When they arrived, they would walk into a warm, lit house. They would feel safe. They would sit at my table and spread out their papers. They would think the game was over. But the game was just starting. I wasn't just going to sign papers. I was going to conduct a seance. I reached up and unlocked the panel. 1 hour. I needed to set up the generator. I needed to check the sound system one last time. And I needed to make sure Maya was in position. I texted her. "Curtain up in 60 minutes. Park down the street. Come in through the back. Don't let them see you." She replied instantly. "I am ready. Let's nail this bastard." I smiled in the darkness of the basement. Braden Cole was coming to collect his prize. He was coming to take my life apart. He didn't know that I had already dug the grave. All he had to do was walk into it. I turned off the basement light. I stood in the dark listening to the hum of the house. It was time to turn the lights out. The headlights of the black SUV cut through the blinding white of the blizzard like searchlights from a prison tower. I watched from the living room window as the car crawled up my driveway, fighting the drifts that had accumulated in the last hour. The wind was howling a banshee scream that rattled the old window panes of my house. It was a perfect night for a murder, or a confession. I let the curtain fall back into place. I checked my pocket one last time. The remote control for the generator was there. The phone with the recording app running was there. I adjusted my cardigan, making sure I looked small, defeated, and harmless. I sat down at the head of the dining room table. The papers were already spread out. The deed to the house, the transfer of the trust fund, the power of attorney. The doorbell rang. It was urgent, impatient. I walked to the door, shuffling my feet. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled it open. The wind tried to rip the door from my hand, blowing snow into the foyer. Braden stepped in first. He was wearing a heavy trench coat, snow melting on his shoulders. His face was pale, his eyes darting around the hallway as if he expected something to jump out of the shadows. Behind him was a short, round man clutching a briefcase to his chest. He wore a cheap suit that was too thin for this weather and shoes that were already soaked through. "Close the door," Braden snapped, pushing past me. "It is freezing." I closed the door, shutting out the storm. The silence of the house returned heavy and oppressive. "This is Mr. Kincaid," Braden said, gesturing to the wet man. "He is my attorney. He is here to witness the signatures and notarize the documents." Mr. Kincaid wiped his foggy glasses on his tie. He didn't look me in the eye. He looked at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at the man he was about to help rob. He smelled of stale tobacco and nervous sweat. He was a bottom feeder, the kind of lawyer you hire from a billboard next to a bail bondsman. Perfect. He would crumble when the pressure hit. Good evening, I said, my voice soft. Thank you for coming out in this weather. Let's just get this done, Braden interrupted. He walked into the dining room and threw his coat on the sofa. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask about the heat. He went straight to the table. He looked at the papers. He picked up the transfer document and scanned it. His hands were shaking. A subtle tremor. Was it the cold, or was it the withdrawal from whatever pills he was popping to keep his nerves steady? Or maybe it was the fear of the ghost he thought he heard last night. Everything is here, I said, sitting down slowly. Just like you asked. Braden smiled. It was a rictus of relief. He thought he had crossed the finish line. He thought the money was his. Sit down, Kincaid, Braden ordered. Get your stamp ready. The lawyer sat down, opening his briefcase with wet, clumsy fingers. He pulled out a notary stamp and an ink pad. He placed them on the mahogany table next to the vintage coaster. You are doing the right thing, Isaiah Braden said, his voice dropping into that fake, oily sincerity. This secures Leo's future. And yours. The facility is ready for you on Monday. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had sat at this table for Thanksgiving dinners, who had toasted to my health, who had held my daughter's hand. I looked for a shred of humanity. I found none. Just a desperate, greedy animal cornered by his own mistakes. I picked up the pen. It was a cheap ballpoint I had left on the table. Where do I sign? I asked. Here, Braden said, pointing to the line at the bottom of the trust transfer. And here on the power of attorney. I lowered the pen to the paper. I let the tip hover just millimeters above the line. Braden leaned in, his eyes hungry. He was holding his breath. I looked up at him. Did you love her? Braden, I asked. He flinched. The question was off script. We were talking about business. We were talking about money. Why bring up the dead wife? What, of course, I loved her. Just sign the paper, Isaiah. I didn't move the pen. She loved you, I said. She told me once that you made her feel safe. That is all she wanted. Safety. Braden's jaw tightened. A vein throbbed in his temple. This is for her son, he hissed. Sign the damn paper. I sighed. I let my hand drop as if I had no strength left. Okay, I whispered. You win. I touched the pen to the paper. Braden exhaled. Kincaid uncapped his stamp. I reached into my pocket with my left hand and pressed the button on the remote. Click. The house plunged into absolute darkness. I had cut the main breaker, but I had also installed a remote kill switch on the backup circuit for the dining room. The darkness was total. Instant. The storm outside covered the moon, so there was no ambient light coming through the windows. It was like being sealed in a tomb. What the hell? Braden shouted. His voice cracked. It is just the storm, Kincaid squeaked. The lines must be down. I didn't move. I sat perfectly still in the dark. I knew the layout of my house by heart. I knew exactly where they were. Braden, turn on your phone flashlight, Kincaid said, the sound of him fumbling with his briefcase loud in the silence. No, I said, my voice cutting through the dark. Not the storm. Then the sound began. It started upstairs in the master bedroom directly above us. It wasn't loud. It was a hum. A soft, melodic humming. Braden's breath hitched. I heard him scramble backward, his chair scraping violently against the floor. Did you hear that? He whispered. Hear what Kincaid asked. I don't hear anything. Shh, Braden hissed. Listen. The humming grew louder. It evolved into words. A woman's voice, singing. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. It was a lullaby. The lullaby Nia used to sing to Leo when he was a baby. But the tone was wrong. It wasn't soothing. It was mournful, distorted. It echoed through the heating vents, carrying through the house like a draft. Braden knocked over his chair. Who is that? He screamed into the dark. Who is upstairs? Isaiah, do you have someone else in the house? Kincaid asked, his voice trembling. This isn't funny. Turn the lights on. I stayed silent. I let the fear marinate. The singing stopped. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps on the floorboards above our heads. Creak, creak, creak. They were walking from the bedroom to the top of the stairs. Braden was panting now, short, terrified gasps. It is her, he whimpered. She is here. You are talking crazy, Braden Kincaid said, sounding like he was about to bolt. It is just the old man playing tricks. Isaiah, turn the lights on, or I am leaving. The footsteps stopped. right at the top of the landing. Then the voice spoke again, not singing this time, speaking, clear, cold. "Why did you lie to me, Brady?" The nickname, the one she only used in private, the one I had coached Maya to use. A beam of light cut through the darkness. Braden had pulled out his tactical flashlight, the one he carried in his car. The beam swung wildly around the room, illuminating the dusty corners, the china cabinet, my calm face. He wasn't holding just a flashlight. In his other hand, shaking violently, was a silver snub-nose revolver. He pointed the gun at the ceiling, then at the hallway, then at me. "Where is she?" he screamed. "Where are you hiding her?" Kincaid saw the gun and shrieked. He dove under the heavy oak table, clutching his briefcase like a shield. "Braden, put that away," the lawyer yelled from the floor. "Are you insane? You can't pull a gun in a notary meeting." "She is dead," Braden yelled, spinning in a circle. "I buried her. I saw the body." "Did you?" the voice called from the stairs, "or did you just close the casket so you didn't have to look at what you did?" Braden fired. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. The muzzle flash lit up the room like a lightning strike for a split second. Ideally, the bullet hit the ceiling plaster, raining dust down on the table. "Braden," I shouted, standing up, "you are shooting at ghosts. Put the gun down. Stay back," he screamed, swinging the beam onto my face. The light blinded me. "You did this. You brought her back. You witch doctor, you crazy old bat." He was losing it completely. The veneer of the slick financial advisor was gone. This was the man who owed money to sharks. This was the man who killed his wife. He was cornered by his own guilt and the darkness. "I am cold. Brady," the voice drifted down the stairs. "My legs are broken. Why didn't you help me? Why did you let the insurance money run out?" "Shut up," Braden roared. He fired again. Bam! Ideally, the bullet shattered the mirror in the hallway. Glass rained down. Kincaid was sobbing under the table. I am leaving. Don't kill me." Braden wasn't listening to him. He ran to the bottom of the stairs. He shone the light up into the darkness of the second floor. "Come out," he screamed. "Come out and die again." He started up the stairs, taking them two at a time. The gun led the way. I didn't stop him. This was part of the plan. I needed him upstairs. I needed him away from the front door. I reached into my pocket and pressed the second button on the remote. The smart lights in the hallway flickered. They turned a deep, sickly red. I had installed the color-changing bulbs months ago for holidays, but tonight they set the stage for hell. Braden stopped on the stairs, bathed in the crimson light. He looked like a demon ascending from the pit. "Come upstairs, Brady," the voice whispered. "Let's talk about the money. Let's talk about the $2 million. He let out a primal roar and charged up to the landing. I moved fast. For an old man, I moved very fast. I went to the front door and unlocked it, leaving it slightly ajar. Then I went to the bottom of the stairs. I had to be the witness. I had to see the confession. Kincaid crawled out from under the table. He was hyperventilating. "Mr. Washington, I am going to the police," he stuttered. "Your son-in-law is a maniac. He has a gun." "Go," I said, grabbing his collar. "Go to your car. Call 911. Tell them there is a shooter in the house. Tell them Braden Cole is trying to kill me." The lawyer didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled out the front door, slipping on the snow, running for his life. Perfect. The police were on their way. The witness was terrified. Now all I needed was for Braden to survive long enough to be arrested. I looked up the stairs. The red light pulsed. Braden was in the hallway now. He was kicking open bedroom doors. "Nia," he screamed. "Show yourself." I walked up the stairs, my hand on the banister. I wasn't afraid of the gun. I knew something Braden didn't. I knew that gun very well. He kept it in his glove box. I had serviced my truck last week, and while I was in the garage, I had picked the lock on his SUV. I had taken the firing pin out of that revolver and filed it down just a fraction of an inch. It would fire a few times maybe if he got lucky with the hammer strike. He had gotten 2 shots off. Luck was a finite resource. I reached the top of the landing. Braden was standing at the end of the hall facing the door to Nia's old room. The door was closed. The singing started again, coming from behind that door. "I love you in a place where there's no space or time." Braden raised the gun. He kicked the door open. He shone the light inside, and then he screamed. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated horror. Because sitting in the rocking chair in the middle of the room, illuminated by a single candle, was Nia. She was wearing the red coat. Her face was covered in blood. and she was holding a stack of cash in her lap. Braden dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, the beam spinning wildly. "It is impossible," he whimpered, backing away. I stepped onto the landing. "It is only impossible if you are innocent, Braden," I said. He spun around, aiming the gun at my chest. His eyes were wide, the pupils blown. He was shaking so hard the gun rattled. You did this? You hired someone that isn't her shoot me." Then I said, walking toward him, "Shoot me and explain to the police why you killed a defenseless old man, or explain to them why you killed your wife." He pulled the trigger. Click. The hammer fell. No bang. He pulled it again. Click. He looked at the gun in betrayal. "It seems your luck has run out, son," I said. Just then, sirens began to wail in the distance. Blue and red lights flashed against the snowy windows. The cavalry was coming. But the show wasn't over. The figure in the chair stood up. Maya stepped into the hallway light. The blood on her face was corn syrup and red dye. The cash was my life savings. She pointed a finger at him. "Tell him," she said, using Nia's voice. "Tell him why you did it, or I will follow you to your cell. I will whisper to you every night. I will never let you sleep." Braden collapsed to his knees. He dropped the useless gun. He put his hands over his face and began to sob. "I had to," he wailed. "I had to pay Vinnie. They were going to break my legs. She was going to leave me. She was going to take the money. I didn't have a choice." I pulled out my phone. The recording app was still running. The red waveform bounced with every word of his confession. "You always have a choice, Braden," I said, standing over him, "and you chose wrong." The red emergency lights pulsed in the hallway, bathing the scene in the color of a fresh arterial wound. It was theatrical. It was excessive. But for a man like Braden Cole, whose entire life was a performance of wealth and success, this was the only stage that fit his finale. I stood at the top of the stairs, melting into the shadows. I was no longer the actor. I was the director, and my leading lady was about to make her entrance. The door to Nia's old bedroom swung fully open. Maya stepped out. She had done exactly what I asked. She wasn't wearing the pristine red coat anymore. She was wearing a white dress, a simple summer dress Nia used to wear to barbecues. But Maya had destroyed it. She had torn the hem, she had ripped the sleeves, and she had covered the front of it in corn syrup and red dye. In the flickering crimson light of the hallway, it didn't look like stage makeup. It looked like she had just crawled out of a wreck. It looked like she had bled out. She walked to the top of the stairs. She moved slowly, a jagged, broken gait, like her legs were crushed. Braden was at the bottom of the stairs. He was trembling so violently that the flashlight beam in his hand was drawing frantic scribbles on the walls. He raised the gun again. He pointed it straight at her face. "Stop!" he screamed. His voice was raw, shredded by terror. "Stay back!" Maya didn't stop. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at the gun. She locked her eyes on Braden. Her expression was a masterpiece of cold, detached judgment. She took the first step down. The floorboard creaked. "Have you spent it all yet, Brady?" she asked. Her voice drifted down the stairwell, soft and accusing. "The $2 million. Is it gone? Did you spend my life on bad bets and cheap whiskey?" Braden squeezed the trigger. Boom! The gun fired. He got lucky. The firing pin I had filed down managed to strike the primer just right. The sound was deafening in the confined space of the stairwell. A chunk of plaster exploded from the ceiling directly above Maya's head, raining white dust down onto her bloody hair. I flinched. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the risk. This was the variable I couldn't control. If he hit her, it was over. If he killed her, I was an accessory to manslaughter. But Maya didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She didn't duck. She was a kid from the South Side who had seen worse things than a shaking coward with a snub-nosed revolver. She walked through the falling plaster like it was snow. "You missed," she whispered. "Just like you missed my birthday. Just like you missed our anniversary." Braden stared at the hole in the ceiling, then back at her. The reality of the bullet didn't ground him. It broke him further. He had fired a lethal weapon and the nightmare was still coming. He backed up until his back hit the front door. He was trapped. "I know who you are," he shrieked. He sounded like a cornered rat. "You are that bitch Maya. I hired you. I have your passport. I told you to leave. Get out of here." He was trying to use logic to fight insanity. He was trying to invoke the contract he made with a fraudster to stop a ghost. Maya took another step down. She was halfway down the stairs now. The red light made the syrup on her dress glisten. "Who is Maya?" she asked, tilting her head. The gesture was perfect. It was Nia's gesture. "I am Nia," she said. "Don't you recognize me?" "Husband, you made me this way." She pointed to her legs. She pointed to the red stains on her chest. "You did this on February 14th, she said. "Valentine's Day. You bought me flowers in the morning, and you cut my brake lines in the afternoon. Do you remember, Brady? Do you remember the sound of the metal crunching?" Braden dropped the flashlight. It clattered on the hardwood floor, rolling away and casting long, spinning shadows that danced on the walls. He gripped the gun with both hands, aiming it at her chest, but he couldn't pull the trigger again. His fingers were frozen. "Stop it!" he yelled. "Stop talking! You sent me into that wall!" Maya continued, her voice rising, gaining power. "You watched me drive away. You kissed me goodbye, and you knew I wasn't coming back. Why, Brady? Why did you do it?" She reached the bottom of the stairs. She was 10 feet away from him. Braden slid down the door until he was sitting on the floor. He put the gun to his head, then back to her, then back to the door. He was looking for an exit, but the deadbolt was locked and his hands were too slippery with sweat to turn it. "I had to," he screamed. The confession erupted from him like vomit. "It wasn't a choice I had to." "Why?" Maya asked, looming over him. "Because you were leaving," he roared. His face was twisted ugly with tears and snot. "You filed the papers. I saw the email to your lawyer. You were going to divorce me." He was sobbing now, rocking back and forth, the gun dangling from his finger. "You were going to take everything. The prenup was airtight. I would have been left with nothing. And I owed Vinny. I owed him 50 grand. They were going to break my legs. Nia, they were going to kill me." I stood at the top of the stairs, recording every word. The phone in my hand felt heavy. This was it. This was the motive. Greed, fear, cowardice. I didn't have a choice. Braden wailed. "If you divorced me, I was dead. If you died, I got the insurance. I got the settlement. I saved myself. I did what I had to do." He looked up at her, his eyes begging for understanding, begging for absolution from the woman he murdered. "I saved us," he whispered. "I did it for the family." Maya stood over him. She looked down at the pathetic heap of a man. She didn't offer forgiveness. She didn't offer comfort. "You didn't save us," she said, her voice dropping back to that terrifying whisper. "You killed us. And you spent it all." She reached into the pocket of her bloody dress. She pulled out the stack of cash I had given her. My life savings. $10,000. She threw it at him. The bills fluttered down through the red light, landing on his lap, landing on the floor, landing on the gun. "Is this enough?" she asked. "Is this what I was worth?" Braden stared at the money. He tried to grab it, instinct taking over, but his hands were shaking too badly. I stepped out from the shadows of the landing. I walked down the stairs slowly, heavily. The floorboards groaned under my boots. Braden looked up. He saw me. He saw the phone in my hand. The red recording light was steady. The confusion in his eyes cleared for a second, replaced by a dawn of horror. He looked at Maya. He looked at the money. He looked at me. It was a setup," he whispered. I reached the bottom of the floor. I walked over to the wall switch and hit the main lights. The red glow vanished. The harsh, bright yellow of the hallway chandelier flooded the space. The ghost evaporated. Maya was just a girl in a ruined dress covered in sticky corn syrup. The blood wasn't real. The darkness wasn't real. But the confession, that was real. Braden scrambled to his feet. He looked at the gun in his hand. He looked at me. You old son of a bitch," he hissed. "You tricked me." I held up the phone. "I audited you, Braden," I said. "And you just balanced the books." He raised the gun. His eyes were wild again. He realized the ghost couldn't hurt him, but the law could. And I was the law. "Give me the phone," he said, pointing the barrel at my face. "Give it to me, or I swear to God I will put you in the ground right next to her." I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. I looked at the revolver. I looked at the cylinder. I could see the primer of the next round. "You can try, Braden," I said. "But you used your one lucky shot on the ceiling." He pulled the trigger. Click. The hammer fell on empty air. The firing pin didn't reach. He pulled it again. Click. Again. Click. He looked at the gun in betrayal. He looked at me in disbelief. I told you, I said, stepping closer. I fixed your car, Braden, and I fixed your gun. You are sloppy. You rely on tools you don't understand. He threw the gun at my head. It missed, hitting the wall with a heavy thud. He lunged for me. He was younger. He was bigger. He was desperate. But he was fighting a man who had been waiting 5 years to punch him in the face. I stepped inside his swing. I brought my right hand up hard into his solar plexus. The breath left him in a rush. He doubled over. I grabbed him by the collar of his expensive trench coat and slammed him against the door. "That is for Nia," I growled. I hit him again, a short, sharp hook to the jaw. His head snapped back. He slumped to the floor, sliding down the wood unconscious or just too cowardly to get back up. I stood over him, breathing hard. My knuckles ached. It felt good. I looked at Maya. She was standing by the stairs, shaking her arms wrapped around herself. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her cold and terrified. "You did good, kid," I said. "You did real good." I walked over to the side table where the landline sat. I picked up the receiver. It had a dial tone. The storm hadn't knocked out the copper wires. I dialed 911. 911. "What is your emergency? I need police at 424 Maple Drive." I said, my voice steady. "I have a confession to a homicide, and I have the suspect in custody." I hung up. I looked down at Braden. He was groaning, clutching his jaw. "The show is over, Braden," I said. I looked at the stack of money scattered on the floor. I looked at the hole in the ceiling. It was a mess, but it was a balanced mess. The truth was out. The debt was paid. Now all I had to do was wait for the sirens. The generator kicked in with a mechanical roar that vibrated through the floorboards. It wasn't the soft hum of the city grid returning. It was the angry industrial chug of the diesel backup system I had installed in the basement 5 years ago. I pressed the remote in my pocket one last time. The red emergency lights died instantly. In their place, the overhead chandelier exploded into brilliance. The hallway was flooded with harsh, unforgiving white light. It washed away the shadows. It washed away the atmosphere of the tomb. It revealed the dust motes dancing in the air and the water stains on the wallpaper. It revealed the truth. I stood at the top of the stairs. I was no longer crouching. I was no longer trembling. I let the posture of the 73-year-old invalid drop from my shoulders like a heavy coat. I straightened my spine. I planted my feet shoulder-width apart. I looked down at the 2 men cowering in my foyer. I wasn't holding a cane. I wasn't holding a walker. I was holding my Mossberg 500 pump-action shotgun. The matte black steel absorbed the light. I rested the stock against my hip, the barrel angled slightly downward, pointing directly at the center of Braden's chest. "Thank you for the confession, son," I said. My voice was no longer the raspy whisper of a grieving father. It was the voice that had commanded platoons in the Mekong Delta. It was loud. It was clear. And it was absolutely steady. I looked at the lawyer. He was still on his knees, clutching his briefcase to his chest like a life preserver. His cheap suit was soaked with sweat and melted snow. His glasses were steamed up, blinding him. "And thank you, counselor," I continued. "Your presence here is invaluable. You are an officer of the court. You just witnessed a confession to capital murder. That makes you a material witness." Kincaid scrambled backward, his heels slipping on the polished wood. He looked from me to Braden, then to the girl on the stairs covered in corn syrup, then back to the shotgun. The reality of his situation hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't just notarizing a document for a fee anymore. He was standing in the middle of a homicide investigation. I didn't know," Kincaid stammered. He tried to stand up, but his legs were jelly. He clawed at the wall for support. "Braden told me it was a standard trust transfer. He said it was administrative. I didn't know anything about a brake line. I didn't know anything about a crash." He looked at Braden with pure revulsion. "You killed her," he screamed, his voice cracking. "You actually killed her." Braden didn't look at the lawyer. He was staring at me. He was staring at the shotgun. He was blinking rapidly, his eyes adjusting to the light. The terror that had consumed him in the darkness was evaporating, replaced by a cold, sharp realization. The ghost wasn't real. The red light was a special effect. The voice was an actress. He had been tricked. He had been played. Kincaid didn't wait for an answer. He lunged for the door. He fumbled with the lock, his hands shaking so badly he couldn't turn the deadbolt. "I am leaving," he yelled. "I am gone. I never heard anything. I wasn't here. He got the door open. The storm howled outside, but it was safer than the storm inside. He ran out into the snow, without his coat slipping and sliding down the driveway, disappearing into the white void. I let him go. He wasn't the target. He was the messenger. He would run straight to the police, or he would hide in a bottle, but either way, his testimony was locked in. I looked back at Braden. He was slowly standing up. He wiped the tears and snot from his face with the back of his expensive sleeve. He looked at Maya standing halfway down the stairs. He saw the corn syrup drying on her skin. He saw the tattoo on her wrist. You, he hissed. You are the junkie. The actress. Maya didn't flinch. She stood her ground. Yeah, she said, her voice flat. And you are the killer. Braden turned his gaze to me, his face twisted. It wasn't fear anymore, it was hatred. Pure, distilled hatred. He realized that the old man he planned to put in a nursing home had just dismantled his entire life in 45 minutes. He looked at the revolver in his hand. He had dropped it in his panic, but he must have picked it up when the lights came on. He gripped it tight. His knuckles were white. You think you are clever, old man, he said. His voice was low, dangerous. You think this little light show changes anything? I pumped the shotgun. Shh. The sound was unmistakable. It is the universal language of stop what you are doing. It changes everything, Braden, I said. It is over. The police are coming. I recorded everything. You are done. Put the gun down. Braden laughed. It was a wet, broken sound. The police. In this weather, it will take them 20 minutes to get here. Maybe 30. He raised the revolver. He pointed it at my face. That is a lifetime, Isaiah. I didn't move. I kept the shotgun leveled. You are digging the hole deeper, son, I said. Deeper, he screamed. There is no deeper. I am buried. You buried me. He took a step toward the stairs. You think that cheap piece of junk scares me? He sneered, nodding at the shotgun. You probably haven't fired that thing in 20 years. You are shaking, old man. Look at you. You are weak. I wasn't shaking. I was vibrating with readiness. But he saw what he wanted to see. He waved the gun toward Maya. I am going to kill you, he said matter-of-factly. I am going to put a bullet in you, and then I am going to put a bullet in this little whore. And you know what the story is going to be. He took another step. The story is going to be that you snapped. The dementia finally took over. You hired a prostitute. You brought her here. You got confused. You shot her. And when I came to check on you, you shot me. Then in a moment of clarity, unable to live with what you did, you ate your own gun. It was a good story. It fit the narrative he had been building for months. The police reports, the doctor's visits, the wandering in the snow. It was plausible. Except for one thing. You are forgetting something, Braden, I said calmly. What is that? He asked, his finger tightening on the trigger. I fixed your car, I said. He frowned. What? The day before Naya died, you took her car to the shop. But you don't know anything about cars. You don't know how brake lines work. You don't know about assembly lube. His eyes widened. I know what you used, Braden, I said. I found the purple grease. I have the sample. He roared in frustration. It didn't matter anymore. The evidence didn't matter if I was dead. Die, he screamed. He squeezed the trigger. He didn't aim at the ceiling this time. He aimed at my heart. Click. The hammer fell. The sound was small, dry, and pathetic in the large hallway. Braden froze. He looked at the gun. He looked at me. He pulled the trigger again. Click. He pulled it again and again. Click. Click. He looked at the cylinder. He could see the bullets. They were there. The primer was dented, but they hadn't fired. He looked up at me, his face a mask of total confusion. I told you, I said, lowering the shotgun slightly. I fixed your car. And yesterday, while you were tearing my living room apart looking for wires, you left your coat on the chair. Your keys were in the pocket. Your car was in the driveway. I took a step down the stairs. I opened your glove box, Braden. I took out this gun. I removed the firing pin. I filed it down 2 millimeters. Just enough to strike the primer, but not enough to ignite the charge. He stared at the gun in his hand. It was a useless lump of metal. You, he stammered. I am an auditor, Braden, I said. I verify everything. I don't leave variables to chance. I knew you would try to kill me. It is the only move you have left. He threw the gun at me. It spun through the air and hit the banister, bouncing harmlessly down the stairs. He looked around wildly. He looked at the door. He looked at Maya. Then he looked at me with a feral desperation. He reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a knife, a switchblade. "You old bastard," he hissed. "I will do it with my hands then." He charged up the stairs. He was fast. He was fueled by the adrenaline of a man who knows he has no tomorrow. He took the steps 3 at a time. Maya screamed. "Isaiah, I didn't shoot. I didn't want to kill him. Death was too easy. Death was an escape. I wanted him to live. I wanted him to sit in a cell for 50 years thinking about the wife he murdered." I shifted my grip on the shotgun. I held it by the barrel, turning it into a club. Braden reached the landing. He lunged the knife, flashing in the electric light. I stepped aside. I let his momentum carry him past me. As he stumbled trying to turn, I swung the stock of the shotgun. I didn't aim for the head. I aimed for the knee. Crack! The sound of wood hitting bone was sickeningly loud. Braden screamed. His leg buckled. He collapsed onto the hardwood floor, the knife skittering away. He curled into a ball, clutching his shattered knee, howling in agony. I stood over him. I kicked the knife down the stairs. "I am not senile, Braden," I said, breathing hard but steady, "and I am not weak." I looked down at the man who had taken everything from me. He was broken. He was finished. Maya walked up the stairs. She stood beside me, looking down at him. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked disgusted. "Is it over?" she asked. I listened. In the distance, rising above the wind of the storm, I heard sirens. "Yeah," I said, "it is over." Braden looked up at me, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat. "Please," he whispered. "Please, Dad, help me." I looked at him. I looked at the man who pushed my daughter off a cliff. "I am not your dad," I said. I walked over to him, reached into his pocket, and pulled out his phone. I stopped the recording. I hit send. To the cloud. To my lawyer. To the police tip line. Then I sat down in the rocking chair Nia used to use to nurse Leo. I rested the shotgun on my lap. I waited for the police to come and collect the trash. The sound of the hammer striking the empty chamber was a dry metallic click that echoed through the hallway like a gavel hitting a judge's bench. It was a small sound, a pathetic sound, but in that moment it was the loudest noise in the world. Braden stared at the gun in his hand. His eyes were wide, the pupils blown out by adrenaline and terror. He looked at the cylinder. He looked at me. He pulled the trigger again, click, and again, click. He squeezed it with both hands, his knuckles turning white, trying to force the machine to kill me. He didn't understand. He thought it was divine intervention. He thought it was luck. He didn't realize that luck had nothing to do with it. "You are confused, Braden," I said, my voice calm, steady, and low. "You are wondering why the loud noise didn't happen. You are wondering why I am not bleeding on the floor." I took a step down the stairs. The shotgun in my hands felt light. It felt like an extension of my arm. I hadn't held a weapon like this since 1971 in the Mekong Delta, but the muscle memory was there. It was in my bones. "You left your coat on the armchair yesterday," I said. "When you were tearing my living room apart, looking for wires, looking for cameras, you got hot. You took off that expensive Italian trench coat and you threw it on my recliner. You were so busy screaming at me, so busy trying to find the ghost, that you forgot about the physical world." Braden lowered the gun slightly, his mouth opening and closing. He looked like a fish gasping for air on a dock. "I walked over to that chair while you were in the kitchen screaming at the cabinets," I continued. I felt the weight in the pocket. It was heavy, too heavy for a wallet. I reached in. I found the snub nose. It was fully loaded. Hollow points. Nasty rounds, Braden. You really wanted to make a mess, didn't you? I stopped 3 steps above him. I towered over him. The red emergency lights I had installed were still pulsing, giving the scene a rhythmic, bloody heartbeat. "You forgot who I was," I said. "You saw an accountant. You saw a man who pushes pencils and checks spreadsheets. You saw a grandfather who knits scarves and bakes cookies. You forgot the 20 years before that. You forgot that before I audited books, I audited inventory for the U.S. Army. I was a small arms repairman, Braden. I can strip a weapon like that down to its springs and pins in 30 seconds blindfolded." Braden looked at the revolver with betrayal. He looked at it like it was a snake that had bitten him. "I didn't take the bullets," I said. "That would have been too obvious. You might have checked the cylinder. You might have noticed the weight difference. No." I opened the frame. I took out the firing pin. I used a metal file from my garage. I shaved 2 millimeters off the tip, just enough. The hammer falls, but the pin doesn't reach the primer. It is a paperweight, Braden. A useless piece of steel. Just like you. He screamed. It was a sound of pure frustration, of impotent rage. He threw the gun at me. It spun through the air end over end. I didn't flinch. It hit the banister with a heavy thud and clattered down the stairs, landing at Maya's feet. Maya looked down at the gun. She didn't step back. She reached up and grabbed the long, dark wig she was wearing. She yanked it off. Her natural hair, short and braided, was underneath. She wiped the back of her hand across her forehead, smearing the corn syrup and red dye. The illusion was gone. The ghost of Nia was gone. Standing there was just a young woman from the South Side who had been pushed too far. "You hired me to scare him," Maya said, her voice shaking but her chin held high. "You paid me to drive him crazy. Well, he isn't crazy, Braden. He is just smarter than you, and he pays better." Braden looked at her, his eyes focused on her face, stripped of the shadows and the wig. He saw the deception. He saw the trick. And his brain snapped. He realized he hadn't been fighting a supernatural force. He hadn't been fighting his conscience. He had been fighting two people he considered beneath him. An old black man and a desperate young woman. And he had lost. The humiliation was worse than the fear. It broke something inside him. His face twisted into a mask of feral hatred. He bared his teeth. A low growl started in his throat. "You bitch," he hissed. "You dirty little junkie bitch. You think you can mock me? You think you can take my money and laugh at me?" He didn't look at me. He looked at Maya. In his mind, I was the one with the shotgun. I was the threat. But she was the betrayal. She was the one who had made him vulnerable. She was the easier target. I saw his muscles tense. I saw his weight shift. "Braden, no," I shouted. He lunged. He didn't come for me. He launched himself at Maya. He moved with the desperate, explosive speed of a cornered animal. His hands were claws reaching for her throat. He wanted to hurt something. He wanted to destroy the thing that had made him feel small. Maya screamed and tried to scramble backward, but she tripped on the hem of the ruined dress. She fell hard onto the landing. Braden was on top of her in a second, his hands wrapped around her neck. He was screaming wordless, guttural sounds of rage. He was squeezing. He was going to kill her right there in my hallway. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think. The auditor was gone. The soldier was back. I racked the slide of the Mossberg. "Ch-ch! Get off her!" I roared. He didn't hear me. He was lost in the red haze. He was banging her head against the floorboards. I descended the last 2 steps. I didn't aim for his head. I didn't aim for his chest. I wanted him alive. I wanted him to feel every second of the next 40 years in a concrete box. I wanted him to suffer. I lowered the barrel. I aimed for the meat of his right thigh. I pulled the trigger. Boom! The sound was thunder in a bottle. The muzzle flash lit up the hallway brighter than the sun. The recoil slammed into my shoulder, a familiar and welcome pain. The blast caught him mid-thigh. The buckshot shredded his expensive trousers and the flesh beneath. Braden didn't just fall. He was thrown. The kinetic energy of the shot knocked him sideways off of Maya. He spun in the air and crashed into the wall, sliding down, leaving a smear of real bright red blood on the wallpaper. The screaming stopped, instantly replaced by a stunned silence. Then the pain hit him. He looked at his leg. He looked at the ruin of his thigh. He opened his mouth and a sound came out that wasn't human. It was a high, thin wail of agony. He clutched his leg, his hands instantly slick with blood. "My leg," he shrieked. "You shot my leg." I pumped the shotgun again, ejecting the spent shell. It clattered onto the floor, smoking. I chambered another round. I walked over to him. I kicked his good leg, moving his foot away from where he could leverage himself up. I pointed the barrel at his face. "Stay down," I said. My voice was ice. "Stay down or the next one goes in your knee." Maya scrambled away from him, pushing herself across the floor with her heels until her back hit the opposite wall. She was gasping for air, rubbing her throat where red marks were already forming. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Is he dead?" she wheezed. "No," I said, keeping my eyes on Braden. "He isn't dead. He is just canceled." Braden was writhing on the floor, curling into a fetal position. The blood was pooling around him, soaking into the rug. "You shot me," he sobbed. "You shot me, you crazy old man. You are going to jail. You assaulted me." I looked down at him with zero pity. "I defended a woman you were trying to strangle," I said. "In my own home. After you broke in. After you tried to shoot me with a weapon you brought. I nodded toward the useless revolver lying near the stairs. That gun is registered to you, Braden. It has your prints on it, and it has the firing pin tampering marks. The forensics will show you tried to fire it 4 times. That is 4 counts of attempted murder. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I stopped the recording. I tapped the screen, sending the audio file to the cloud to my lawyer and to the private server I set up yesterday. "It is over, son," I said. Braden looked up at me. His face was gray. The shock was setting in. "Please," he whispered. "Please, Dad. Call an ambulance. I am bleeding out." I looked at the blood. It was a lot. But I knew anatomy. I missed the femoral artery. I aimed for the muscle. He wasn't going to die, he was just going to hurt. A lot. "I will call them," I said. "But first we are going to wait." "Wait for what?" He gasped, clutching his leg. "We are going to wait for you to realize that you didn't just lose the money," I said. "You lost the narrative." I walked over to the landline on the side table. I picked it up. "Maya, are you okay?" I asked without looking back. She nodded, coughing. "I am okay." "Good." I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency?" "My name is Isaiah Washington," I said clearly. "There has been a home invasion at 424 Maple Drive. The intruder is down. He is armed. And he has confessed to the murder of Nia Washington. Send the police. And send an ambulance." I hung up the phone. Braden was crying softly now, a whimpering sound. Why, he whispered. "Why didn't you just sign the papers?" "Because," I said, looking at the photo of Nia on the mantel. "Because you thought I was a line item, Braden. You thought I was a liability to be written off." I walked back and stood over him, the shotgun resting easy in my hands. "You forgot the first rule of auditing," I said. "Always check the footnotes." The front door burst open for the second time that night, but this time it wasn't a desperate lawyer fleeing a crime scene. It was a tactical entry team from the Chicago Police Department. They moved with the precision of a machine. Flashlights cut through the lingering haze of gun smoke. Boots hammered against the hardwood. Voices barked overlapping commands that turned the hallway into a wall of noise. "Police, get on the ground. Let me see your hands. Weapon, I see a weapon." I didn't move. I sat in the rocking chair, the shotgun resting across my knees. I kept my hands visible, palms open near the trigger guard, but not on it. I knew the drill. I didn't want to get shot by a rookie with an itchy finger. "Officer, secure the weapon," I said, my voice calm, cutting through the chaos. "The safety is on. The chamber is empty." A young officer rushed me, snatching the shotgun away. He patted me down rough and fast. I let him. I watched the other 3 officers swarm Braden. He was still curled on the floor, clutching his shattered knee, sobbing into the rug. He didn't fight them. He didn't even seem to notice them at first. He was staring at the spot where Maya had stood, staring at the empty air where he thought he saw a ghost. "Help me," he babbled as they grabbed his arms. "She is here. She is still here. Do not let her touch me. Get your hands behind your back. Stop resisting." "I am not resisting," Braden screamed as they wrenched his arms back. His expensive trench coat was ruined, stained with blood and floor wax. "Get her away from me. She has no face. She has no face." They cuffed him. The metal clicked shut. It was the most beautiful sound I had heard in 5 years. Better than any symphony. Better than any jazz record. It was the sound of a ledger closing. A man walked through the open door, stepping over the lawyer's abandoned briefcase. He wasn't wearing tactical gear. He was wearing a long wool coat and a fedora. He looked like a detective from a different era. He looked like a man who had seen too much and slept too little. It was Chief Marcus Reynolds, my oldest friend. We served together in the 71st. We played poker every second Tuesday until Nia died and I stopped leaving the house. He looked at the wreckage of my hallway. He looked at the hole in the ceiling. He looked at the blood on the wallpaper. Then he looked at me. "You really know how to throw a party, Ike," he said. I stood up slowly, my knees popping. "I am getting too old for this, Marcus," I said. Marcus walked over to Braden. He looked down at him with an expression of pure disgust. Braden was writhing, trying to pull his knees to his chest, but the handcuffs held him flat. "Is that him?" Marcus asked. "That is him," I said. "The grieving widower." Braden looked up. He saw Marcus. He saw the badge on his belt. "Officer, please," he begged. "You have to arrest him. He is crazy. He has a gun. He tried to kill me. And that girl is an accomplice. Marcus didn't blink. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black receiver. He held it up. "We heard you, Braden," he said. "We heard every word." Braden froze. His eyes darted to the receiver, then to me, then to Maya. Maya stepped forward. She reached up to the neckline of her ruined dress. She pulled out a small wire taped to her collarbone. The tiny microphone glinted in the harsh overhead light. "You were broadcasting live, Braden," she said, her voice devoid of fear. "The whole precinct heard you. They heard you talk about the divorce, they heard you talk about the money, and they heard you talk about the breaks." Braden's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The reality of his situation was crashing down on him with the weight of a collapsing building. He hadn't just confessed to an old man and an actress. He had confessed to the chief of police. "No," he whispered. "No, that is entrapment. That is illegal. You can't use that." Marcus laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You broke into his house, Braden. You threatened him with a firearm. In the state of Illinois, that is a home invasion. And when you start confessing to capital murder during the commission of a felony, we don't need a warrant to listen. You waived your rights when you pulled that trigger." Braden started to hyperventilate. The pain in his leg seemed to register fully for the first time. He screamed a long, ragged sound of agony. "My leg! He shot my leg! I need a doctor. I am bleeding out." "Paramedics are outside," Marcus said, dismissing him. "You will live. Unfortunately for you." He gestured to his officers. "Get him out of here. He is making a mess of the floor." Two officers grabbed Braden by the armpits and dragged him upright. He screamed again, his shattered knee dangling uselessly. They hauled him toward the door. As they passed me, Braden lunged, trying to grab my cardigan. "Isaiah, Dad, please, don't let them take me. I can fix this. I can pay you. I have money. I have investors." I looked him in the eye. I leaned in close so he could hear me over his own sobbing. "You don't have any money, Braden," I said. "I saw the accounts. You are bankrupt. And you don't have a dad. You killed the only family you had left." They dragged him out the door. His screams faded into the howling wind of the blizzard. It was a ghost. It was Naya. I saw her. I saw her. The front door slammed shut. The silence returned, but it felt different now. The house felt lighter. The air felt cleaner. Marcus sighed and took off his hat, shaking the snow from the brim. He walked over to me and put a hand on my shoulder. His grip was firm, warm, and reassuring. "You cut it close, Ike," he said. "Too close. When we heard the gunshot over the wire, I thought we were too late. I thought he got you." I smiled tiredly. "I told you, Marcus. I fixed the gun. I am an auditor. I don't take risks I haven't calculated." Marcus shook his head. "You are a crazy son of a gun. You always were." He walked over to the spot where Braden had fallen. He looked at the smear of blood. "We have units at the salvage yard right now," he said. "They are securing the car. The forensics team is already en route. If that purple grease is what you say it is, and with this audio confession—" He paused, looking back at me. "This is a death penalty case, Ike. Premeditated murder for financial gain. Aggravated by the fraud. Aggravated by the attempt on your life tonight. He is never going to see the sun again." I nodded. "Good." I looked at Maya. She was sitting on the stairs, wiping the corn syrup off her arms with a rag she had found in the kitchen. She looked exhausted. She looked young. "Is she okay?" Marcus asked, lowering his voice. "She saved my life," I said. "She is the witness. Treat her right, Marcus. She has a past, but tonight she was a hero." Marcus looked at her. He nodded. "We will take care of her. We will get her statement. We will make sure the DA knows she cooperated." I walked over to the mantel. I picked up the picture of Nia. The glass was cracked where Braden had knocked it over earlier. I traced the line of the crack with my thumb. "It is done. Baby girl," I whispered. "He can't hurt us anymore." Marcus walked up beside me. "What about the boy?" he asked. "What about Leo?" My heart clenched. Leo. He was still in the closet waiting for me to call, waiting for his grandpa to save him. "He is at his house," I said. "Braden left him there. He is hiding. I need to go get him, Marcus. I need to go now." Marcus nodded. "My car is outside. I will drive you. We have a team heading there now to secure the child, but he needs a familiar face. He needs you. I put the picture down. I buttoned my cardigan. I felt a wave of exhaustion hit me, a bone-deep weariness that made my knees shake, but I pushed it down. The audit wasn't finished. I had recovered the assets, but I still had to secure the future. I walked to the door. I stopped and looked back at the hallway. The red lights were gone. The ghost was gone. It was just a house again. An old house with scars. "Let's go," I said. "My grandson is waiting." The silence that followed the removal of Braden Cole was heavy, but it was not empty. It was filled with the scratch of pens on notebooks, the beep of police radios, and the low murmur of officers securing a crime scene. I stood in the hallway, leaning against the banister. My adrenaline was fading, and in its place was the ache in my joints that reminded me I was 73 years old, not 23. I looked over at Maya. She was sitting on the bottom step, her arms wrapped tight around her knees. The red emergency lights outside cast a rhythmic strobe over her face, washing her in blue and red. She looked small. She looked like a child who had broken a vase and was waiting for the belt. An officer, a young woman with a stern face, approached her. She had a notepad in her hand. "Ma'am, I need to get your statement," the officer said. "We need to know why you were in the house and what your relationship is to the suspect." Maya flinched. Her eyes darted to me wide with panic. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She was terrified. She knew her record. She knew she was on probation. She knew that technically she had broken into my house as part of a fraud scheme. In her mind, she was already in handcuffs. She was already back in a cell. I pushed myself off the banister. My knees popped, but I walked steady. "Officer," I said, my voice projecting that same command authority I used in the boardroom. "Give us a moment, please. She is in shock. She was nearly strangled to death." The officer hesitated, looking from the girl covered in corn syrup to me. "Sir, she is a material witness. We need to process her." "You will," I said, stepping between the officer and Maya. "But first I need to check on her injuries. I am her employer. I am responsible for her. Give us 5 minutes." I looked at Chief Reynolds, who was supervising the tagging of the revolver. Marcus looked at me. He saw the look in my eye, the look that said, "Trust me." "Give them a minute," Officer Marcus said without looking up. "Let Ike calm her down." The young officer nodded and stepped back, moving to the front door to direct the forensics team. I reached down and offered Maya a hand. She took it, her fingers ice cold and sticky with the fake blood. I pulled her up and led her into the kitchen, away from the prying eyes of the law, away from the bloodstain on the floor where Braden had fallen. I closed the kitchen door. The noise of the police radio faded to a dull hum. Maya backed up against the counter, shaking. "I am going to jail," she whispered, tears cutting tracks through the dye on her face. "They are going to run my name. They are going to see my record. Conspiracy. Fraud. Breaking and entering. Braden will talk. He will tell them I was in on it." She looked at me, her face crumbling. "You said you would protect me." I walked over to the pantry. I reached behind the cereal boxes and pulled out the second envelope, the one I had prepared before I left the house this evening. "I am protecting you," I said. I turned to face her. I held up a hand to stop her spiraling. "Listen to me, Maya. Listen closely, because I am only going to say this once." She went still, her chest heaving. "You are not a fraudster," I said, my voice low and firm. "You are not an actress. Tonight, you are my private home health aide." She blinked, confused. "When I hired you last week, I continued creating the narrative brick by brick. I have been having trouble sleeping. I have been anxious. My son-in-law was threatening me. I didn't want to be alone at night. So I hired you off the books to sit with me to make sure I was safe." I stepped closer, handing her a wet paper towel from the counter. "Wipe your face," I ordered. She took it and started scrubbing at the red dye. "Tonight," I went on, "Braden broke in. He cut the power. You heard the noise. You came downstairs to investigate. You were wearing a costume because we were looking through old clothes in the attic. It doesn't matter. He saw you. He snapped. He attacked you." I pointed at her throat, where the red marks from Braden's fingers were already turning purple. "Those marks are real, Maya. That assault was real. You are not a criminal tonight. You are a victim. You are the brave nurse who stood between a murderer and an old man." Maya stared at me. The story was simple. It was clean. It explained her presence. It explained the attack. And because I was the homeowner and the primary victim, the police would believe me. "But why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why lie for me? I tried to scam you. I took his money. I looked at her. I saw the star tattoo on her wrist. I saw the desperation in her eyes. I saw a girl who had made bad choices because she was hungry, not because she was evil. Because you stopped, I said. When it mattered, you stopped. You could have run away when I came to your apartment. You could have called Braden. You could have left me to rot. But you didn't. You put on that dress and you walked down those stairs and you looked a killer in the eye. I held out the envelope. Here. She took it. It was thick. What is this? She asked. The other 10,000, I said. Plus a little extra for hazard pay. She opened the flap. She looked at the money. It was more money than she had probably ever held in her life. Her hands started shaking again. I can't, she whispered. I didn't earn this. You earned it, I said sharply. You earned it when you let him choke you so I could get a clean shot. You earned it when you got that confession on tape. I grabbed her shoulders and made her look at me. I used the voice I used to use with junior auditors who were about to make a mistake that would cost them their careers. You have a gift, Maya. You are a hell of an actress. You convinced a man who knew his wife better than anyone that she had walked out of the grave. That takes talent. Real talent. I let go of her shoulders. Do not waste it, I said. Do not take this money and put it up your nose or give it to some loser boyfriend. Do not use it to pay off a dealer. I pointed at the door where Braden had been dragged out. Look at him. Look at Braden. He had everything. Money, education, opportunity. And he threw it all away because he wanted the easy way out. He wanted the shortcut. And now he is going to die in a cage. I tapped the envelope in her hand. This is your shortcut, Maya, but it is the last one you get. Take this money, go to school, go to LA, go to New York. I don't care. Just go somewhere and be somebody, because if I find out you are running grifts in the South Side again, I will not be your character witness. I will be the one testifying against you. Do you understand me? She nodded. Tears streaming down her clean face now. I understand, she choked out. Good. I turned and opened the kitchen door. Chief Reynolds was standing there waiting. He looked at Maya, then at me. We ready? Ike? He asked. We are ready, Marcus, I said. This is Maya. She is my night nurse. I hired her to help me out around the house. Braden attacked her when she tried to intervene. Marcus looked at Maya. He looked at the bruises on her neck. He looked at the fear in her eyes. He knew. He was a good cop. He knew I was spinning a yarn. But he also knew who the real bad guy was. Okay, Marcus said, nodding slowly. Okay, Ms. Maya. Why don't you come with this officer? We will take your statement. Then we will give you a ride home. You are not in any trouble. You are a witness. Maya looked at me one last time. She clutched the envelope tight against her chest, hidden under her coat. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Isaiah. Go, I said, softy. Break a leg, kid. She walked out of the kitchen, past the police, past the crime scene, and out into the night. I watched her go. I hoped she would make it. I hoped she would take the chance. But the auditor in me knew the odds. The odds are always against people like us. But sometimes you have to bet on the long shot. I turned back to the empty kitchen. My hand was throbbing. My head was pounding. I was alone again. But I wasn't done. I looked at the clock on the stove. It was almost midnight. Braden was in custody. Maya was safe. The money was secured. But there was one asset left to recover. The most important one. Leo. My grandson was sitting in a closet in a house across town, terrified and alone, clutching a burner phone, waiting for a grandpa who promised to save him. I walked to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. I washed away the sweat and the dust. I straightened my cardigan. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I wasn't an auditor. I was a grandfather. I walked out to the living room. Marcus was waiting by the door holding my coat. Ready to go get the boy? Ike, he asked. I took the coat. I put it on. I buttoned it up. I am ready, Marcus, I said. Let's bring him home. The ink on the adoption papers was still wet when we moved into the new house. It sits on an acre of land in Naperville, 40 miles away from the shadows of Maple Drive. 40 miles away from the hallway where I shot a man and the window where a ghost tapped on the glass. The air here is different. It smells of cut grass and charcoal grills, not secrets and old debts. I stood on the back deck watching Leo throw a baseball against a pitchback net I bought him. He is 10 years old, but in the last 6 months he has aged a lifetime. The fear that used to live in his eyes, the flinch he had whenever a door slammed, it is fading. It is being replaced by the grit of a survivor. He knows the truth now. Not all of it. Not the bloody details. But he knows his father is a bad man who did bad things because he loved money more than people. And he knows his grandfather is not a senile old invalid. I took a sip of my coffee. I don't drink Earl Grey anymore. I drink black coffee strong enough to strip paint. I don't wear cardigans. I wear work shirts and denim. The cane is in the trash. The act is over. Braden Cole pleaded guilty 3 weeks ago. His high-priced defense team realized there was no wiggling out of a forensic trap that tight. The purple assembly lube on the brake line matched the tub in his garage. The audio recording of his confession was admissible. And Maya was the nail in the coffin. She testified via video link from California where she is studying theater design. She looked strong, she looked clean. She told the jury exactly how Braden hired her, how he threatened her, and how he tried to kill her. Braden took a deal to avoid the death penalty. Life without the possibility of parole. He will die in a concrete box in Pontiac. He will never see a golf course again. He will never wear an Italian suit again. And he will never, ever see my grandson again. I walked down the steps into the yard. Leo saw me coming and held the ball. "Nice arm, kid," I said, catching the ball he tossed to me. "You are getting stronger." He smiled. It was a real smile, not the tentative, scared smile he used to give me when Braden was watching. "Grandpa," he asked, "are we going to see Mom today?" I nodded. "Yeah, it is time." We hadn't been to the cemetery since the night of the blizzard. Since the night the world broke open. I needed to wait until the dust settled. I needed to wait until I could go there and tell her it was finished. We got into the truck, the 1995 Ford F-150. I kept it. It is honest. It runs on gas and fire, not lies. The drive was quiet. Leo looked out the window watching the suburbs roll by. "Grandpa," he said after a while. "Yeah, Leo. Did you really shoot him?" I looked at him. I didn't lie. I never lie to him. That is the rule now. Absolute truth. "I did," I said. "He was going to hurt Maya. And then he was going to hurt me. I did what I had to do to stop him." Leo nodded, slowly processing this. "Good," he said. It was a hard word from a 10-year-old. But Leo had learned the hard way that sometimes monsters are real, and sometimes you have to put them down. We pulled into the cemetery. It is a beautiful place, rolling hills and old oak trees. Nia's plot is at the top of a rise overlooking the city skyline. I parked the truck. We got out. I grabbed the bouquet of white lilies from the back seat, her favorite. We walked up the hill hand in hand. My grip was firm. His grip was tight. We were a team now, the auditor and the heir. We reached the grave. The headstone was simple. Nia Washington, beloved mother and daughter. I knelt down and placed the flowers on the grass. I traced the letters of her name with my finger. "Hey, baby girl," I whispered. Leo knelt beside me. He touched the stone. "Hi, Mom," he said. We sat there for a long time in silence. The wind rustled the leaves. A bird sang somewhere in the distance. It wasn't sad. It was peaceful. The heavy, suffocating grief that had hung over me for 5 years was gone. It had been replaced by a clean, sharp sorrow. A sorrow I could live with. "I balanced the books, Nia," I said softly. "I found the error. I corrected the entry. I told her about Braden. I told her about the trial. I told her about the trust fund. I had liquidated Braden's remaining assets, the few he hadn't squandered, and put every cent back into Leo's account. I added my own savings. The boy would never want for anything. He would go to college. He would travel. He would have the life she wanted for him. He can't hurt us anymore," I said. "He is just a number in a prison log now." Leo leaned his head on my shoulder. "Grandpa, do you think she can hear us?" I put my arm around him. "I don't believe in ghosts, Leo. Not the kind Braden tried to sell us. But I believe in love. And I believe that kind of love doesn't just disappear. She hears us." I stood up and brushed the grass off my knees. I looked at the city in the distance. I looked at the future. I am 73 years old. Most men my age are slowing down. They are playing bingo. They are waiting for the end. I am just getting started. I have a grandson to raise. I have baseball games to coach. I have homework to check. I have a life to live. A life that Braden Cole tried to steal but failed. I looked down at the grave one last time. "I promised you I would protect him," I said. "And I keep my promises." "Come on, Leo," I said, holding out my hand. "Let's go home. We have to get ready for school tomorrow." He took my hand. We walked down the hill, leaving the dead to rest, leaving the past in the ground where it belonged. I opened the truck door for him. He hopped in. Grandpa, yeah, kid. You are not going to pretend to be sick anymore, right? You are not going to walk funny. I laughed. A deep belly laugh that felt good in my chest. No, Leo. No more acting. The show is closed. I got in the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine roared. I am Isaiah Washington. I am a father. I am a grandfather. And I am the man who beat the devil at his own game. And as I drove out of those gates, I knew one thing for sure. The ledger was balanced. The audit was complete. Case closed. They say age makes you weak, but they forget that age also brings the wisdom of 1,000 battles fought in silence. My son-in-law saw a fragile old man, an easy target for his greed. He didn't see the father who would burn the world down to protect his blood. He thought he could use my grief as a weapon, but he only sharpened my resolve. In the end, the ghosts that haunt us aren't the dead. They are the living who betray us, and sometimes you have to become a monster to save the innocent from one. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. And let me know in the comments, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have called the police earlier, or would you have played the game to the end? I read every comment. Until next time, stay sharp and watch your back.